Hello, Redwall Online Community. Foxpen here, bringing you another episode of Foxpenmanship. This is another super rad chapter of our crazy cool Fanfare series, and I am pleased to tell you our most beautiful. Yes, here we are, the long-coveted art episode. On this episode, I'll be bringing back familiar voice, Redwall Survivor Headrunner and aspiring graphic novel artist, Airan. I'm also excited to introduce to you a brand new guest, fresh to the show and stirring up excitement across the ROC, artist and animation enthusiast, NovaNocturne. There will be many wonderful pieces of art from our guests on today's show, and don't forget to check out the links in the video description for more beautiful and tantalizing exhibits. This is a really exciting episode we have in store for you, so thanks for joining us. Let's get started. My first and very special guest is a student of the arts, majoring in computer technology for animation and game development, a prolific and talented artist of many mediums, member of the Redwall Online Community, NovaNocturne. Hello, Nova. How you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. You're way too kind. Thank you for inviting me on. I'm really excited to talk to you.
I am so excited that you're here. Honestly, this is absolutely dope. This is so good. Thank you for joining me. For the ROC, Nova is an active artistic presence in the ROC, currently running a fantastic Redwall contest of her own design from her website, NovaNocturne.art. The link, of course, will be provided in the description. We're going to discuss this contest because it is absolutely bonkers how amazing it is. But first, Nova, let's get to know you a little.
Sure. What would you like to know?
I'm going to ask you a really difficult question right off the bat to set the tone here. What's your favorite Redwall novel?
Oh, dang it.
I know, right?
That is a hard one. It's hard to beat the original just because it's like the introductory kind of one that I ever got into. But if I really had to pick, it would be a toss-up between Tagarung and probably Pearls of Lutra. I was always such a sucker for otter characters and otter heroes. Tag or Dana was one of my favorite because he was just such a moral character. But then there's also Grath, who's this kind of angel of vengeance trying to avenge her family. And oh, that was just so powerful. I love both of those novels.
Yeah, Pearls of Lucha is one of my favorites. It's one of the first books to ever make me cry, actually.
Oh, wow,
um,
yeah.
when what was his name? Pimkin, gets
Mm,
spoilers for a book that's over 10 years old, murdered. And then they burn down Saint Ninians. It blindsided me. How could they do that to Saint Ninians? It was such a staple of the Redwall universe. It was on every
exactly.
map and every story. But
Hmm.
yeah, as a young girl too, Grath Longfletch was like one of my heroes, just because she was such a strong leading female character, and I always found it utterly adorable. Where after she pretty much annihilates an army single-handedly, takes down San Peter and Ubla's Might Eyes, she's all like, "Oh, and by the way, I have a boyfriend."
Exactly. She was just so epic, and obviously it's so fun to. I was one of those nerdy, I guess not nerdy, but like dorky kids who would play pretend and be running around the schoolyard acting like I was an otter or a squirrel. And I threw some rocks I probably shouldn't have, probably got in trouble. I think I did get written up for it once or twice,
Worth
but
it.
you can't hold back the adventure and the epic stories that really just attach to you.
It is one of those chronicles that just stays with you. Yeah, as a
True.
child, I think that's why one of the reasons the ROC is so strong, and still going after so many decades. It's just the books connect with us. It's
Exactly.
it's interesting how you say Tagarung is one of your favorites. I understand you love otters. I like Marl Fox. It's not an important book whatsoever, but I like foxes. Tagarung is considered one of the worst of the Redwall books. That's interesting. You like it. Why Tagarung?
Oh, um, that's a really good question. I think that the whole character being put in a different situation, scenario, but overcoming what life has dealt him, uh, and becoming a good person regardless was really something that I thought was a good lesson. Yes, there's obviously not always the greatest presentation of how these morals or whatnot are told. Sometimes they're really poorly handled in the books, but I try to look for the most positive and upbeat and inspirational interpretations of these stories, even if there are lessons that don't exactly translate well. And that is what I like to pull from when I speak about like the what pulls me into these stories. Because you're always going to find crappy elements to stories that you don't like, other people don't like, and whatnot. But that's not what I like to focus on. I like to focus on what I can glean from it to, I guess, improve myself.
Whoa, that's deep.
I know. I'm a little intense sometimes.
No, that's really good though, and that's one of the messages of Tagarong actually. And I feel if that book had come out earlier than some of the others, it had come out before Loamhenge, even
Mhm.
before the Long Patrol in that era of the timeline, it probably would have done a lot better for its nurture versus nature argument.
Exactly.
Now, anyone who's listened to the show before will know that it was a trailer of the cartoon for Plaxi. But what about you? What got you into Redwall?
I'm so it's an interesting story. When was I must have been around like 8 or 9 at the time, and I happened to turn on the PBS Kids station in my area, and I think it was a Saturday morning, and I had turned it on, and there was just a battle going on of epic proportions as far as my kid mind was aware of, where, there were rats, and I think it was the finale episode of season 1, and it was just, oh, I had to know what more about it. And back then, I kind of lived in the era before the internet was widely available, so I had to resort to going to my school library and asking the librarian to help me. I told her, "Oh, it's a book about, or it was a show about mice, and they had swords," and she instantly knew what to direct me towards, and
A lady
I
of the
picked up
class.
exactly, and so I picked up the first book that day to read, and I've been hooked ever since.
That is fantastic. That's exactly what happened to me. It was a cartoon, and then I just started greedily sucking up all the books I possibly could. And when you jump from the the finale of the show into the book, was it what
hmm
you were expecting? I mean, 8 or 9, you don't really have expectations per se for a book. You're still learning the tropes of the world and everything. But did it meet your expectations? Did it keep the excitement of the show going?
So I think I caught such a tail end of the episode. I didn't even know that it was the finale. I honestly probably was in under the perception that that was like the meat of it, and that would just be like the whole series is just battles and fighting and epic comebacks and that sort of thing. And so I may have not even I was a dumb kid. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't perceive things quite as clearly as they probably were meant to be. And so seeing the finale, I didn't realize it was any sort of finale, and I don't even think I remembered that I had seen that episode before I then read the book and revisited the animated series. And so it was kind of like seeing it all new again.
Oh, I'm so jealous. Jesus. I would give my, let's say I already gave up my appendix. I would give my gallbladder up next to be able to just forget the cartoon, forget the series, and be able to revisit it. I'm sure a lot of people would be able to say that too.
I would definitely do that.
Now, you said you weren't you got into Redwall at a period where access to internet wasn't common. I think that's also true for a lot of us. I didn't actually have a computer in my home until I was, gosh, 13. It was grade 9 for 13-year-olds in Ontario.
Yeah.
That's literally just in high school. And I was like, I feel like I could really use a computer for, because how fun it. No, I just wanted to screw around and play games, really. But when from the time you read the books and saw the cartoon, when did you seek out a Redwall community online?
Oh, golf. That's um it's kind of a blurry time period for me because I I'm old. I think I'm 27ish now. I don't keep track of numbers all that well. I am an artist, not a mathematician. But so like I said, I think I was around 8 or 9 when I got introduced to the series, and it wasn't until at least I was 11 or 12 that my family even got internet. So, and I didn't, and when we did get internet, I never even realized I could look up stuff on it for a little while longer. And then I think around 13 was when I was like, oh, the TV show has a website where I can get Redwall line art to color. That's so fun. So, I go on there and I print off dozens of copies. My mom got mad at me definitely for printing off that many copies of the same picture over and over and over. But you can't stop an artist. Just no.
Oh, you
um,
can't. Have you looked at our test pages? Jesus.
the what one?
I say, if you look at our test pages, like anything I've ever done in school, all the margins are literally covered in millions, millions, millions.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's art is just it was the absolute draw. It's something I can't deny. So I printed off all of those pages and then I finally learned about Google. And I think this was the early days where it wasn't super popular or anything like that, but I was able to Google certain stuff about like Brian Jakes, and then that kind of led me down the rabbit hole to I think there was a website called the DAB or DAB,
Yeah.
Dibbins Against Bedtime. I lurked on there for a while before I just had to submit some of my drawings, and I remember the website on GeoCities was it wasn't bad, but it was kind of a hot mess trying to navigate it sometimes. But it was amazing to be able to connect with people who shared an interest and they were around the world. I had never experienced anything like that before. And I was so enthralled with the internet. I got kind of attached and addicted, but it led me to some great things and I can't complain about that.
No, honestly, yeah, addictive. That is a good word for the hot mess that was the 90s internet. And that's it. Yeah, Dibbins Against Bedtime. That is one of the. I mean, it's still around. Not quite as large as it used to be. The golden age is over. But at the same time, there was Dab, there was Two Rouge, there was Redwall Beach, and then there was Fort Tatarack. And once you came into the ROC, it was one of those 4 websites that basically hooked you. And then from there, I at least migrated to almost every single one.
Exactly. There was a point that I went through, I think they had like a listing of all their different partners who had created their own website on or their own kind of communities and stuff. And I was just trying to go and sign up on every single one. And I probably gave out way more information than I should have as a kid, but I just couldn't stop. I wanted to know everyone and talk to everyone about all of this amazing stuff, but now I'm much older, a lot wiser, and I'm honestly just happy that I can connect with anyone nowadays.
Yeah, fair. Now this is obviously the art episode of the show. And you did say that you really did enjoy the line art off the old Redwall website. What actually got you into the visual arts?
So, I come from a line of a lot of creative people, and I'll just give a short story of that. My parents were very encouraging because I think they both came from this creative background. They literally met while they were both performing at a local theme park to the area that I live in. My dad was a stuntman, and she was a stage performer who would do singing and dancing and stuff. And honestly, I don't see how if those two kinds of people get together and have kids, that's just a recipe for rampant and unbridled artistry. I mean, it would be impressive for me to walk out of my family and not come away with at least some competitive form of creativity. It's kind of like we have to be creative in my family or else you don't fit in. So like my father, he's this idea guy. My family's obsessed with Halloween, him in particular, so much so that yeah. So he has built and designed and run multiple haunted houses at our own house throughout the years because he's just a nut for that sort of thing. Special effects, stage makeup, etc., etc. Um, and then there's also my mother, who I'm pretty convinced that she's some sort of fey entity, just because she has talent beyond belief for. She may not know how to do something, but she is so willing to try every artistic venue she possibly can, and then master it in such a short amount of time. She has been a chef, architect, muralist. She's a vocalist who has made her own music album, interior designer, landscaper, children's book author, and so on. She's done everything under the sun. And so, my siblings are the same way. My sisters are performers who love stage and music, and my brother is a musician who can pick up any instrument, never having used it before, and play out a tune almost instantly. It's kind of a shock. So if I weren't artistic,
like, holy crap, it's a guild at that point. Everyone in your family is so incredibly talented.
It's true.
Wow, yeah, you never stood a chance. You were never going to be a mathematician.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've been surrounded by creativity and just artisans your whole life. I imagine also through parents you've met a lot in your siblings.
The way to be. It's such a way of life for every single member of my family to just constantly be creating amazing things that I don't think I would have, just or the fact of the matter that it never would have crossed my mind.
That is, I don't want to call you privileged, but you are certainly lucky to be surrounded by. You're really lucky, and you've been able to have your skills fostered too because of that, which is great. I know people who wanted to be artists. I at one point wanted to be an artist, and
I see somebody struggling as an artist. I always try to be that kind of encouragement to them that I had, because I never would have gotten to where I am without that encouragement. And I don't like hearing or seeing others losing their potential because some jerk is just gonna tear them apart. And I don't think that other people's opinions determine your value. Your value is infinite, and your talents are always able to be fostered. And I want to be the kind of person that fosters those talents and encourages people to pursue them. It's the artists who make the world beautiful, and why would we want the world to be ugly?
Really? Got enough natural ugliness going on in the world.
Exactly. We gotta, put some effort into prettifying it.
So, you joined the ROC at a very young age, and you were already in your line art, you're surrounded by your family. How has Redwall specifically influenced your creative works and driven you to go from just a kid filling in the lines to possibly pursuing a career?
Yeah, I'd love to answer that one. It's obviously a huge influence for me. I think what Redwall did when I discovered it is it was something that helped me hone what I was focusing on. You know how kids are. They when they like a TV show or whatever, they'll just zero in and that'll be all they ever talk about. And I was absolutely the same way. But it was a tool in my case because it meant, oh, I want to draw this character. And then I would look at it and I'm like, oh, I got that wrong. How do I fix it? And make it look like the TV show or whatnot. And because I was able to choose something consistent to focus on that I obsessively would practice and practice and practice, I grew into the idea that I can improve. I will achieve a drawing that looks like it's from the show or from the books where, they'd always have those chapter heading pictures, and I would love those. And I think that if I hadn't had an obsession in as nice of terms as possible, I don't know if I would have gotten to the point that I realized I could improve. Yeah, I drew and painted and did all the kid crafts back before, I had ever learned about Redwall. But it was the springboard to facilitate my own training. My parents didn't tell me to do it. I did it of my own volition. And I taught myself art I didn't take a formal art class or anything until I was in, I think, high school, 11th grade, which is sophomore year, or I think that's sophomore year. I'm not good at keeping track, but I didn't take a formal art class until then, and yet people kept asking me, oh, how many classes have you taken? And I would say none, and they were like, what? And I don't think that what I had was talent necessarily. I think it was just persistence. And that's one of the reasons why I think anyone can become an artist if they want to. It just takes a lot of drive and commitment, and it does help to have a nerdy obsession.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's really nice. Like it sounds like it was really motivating to you. And the whole I haven't taken an art course until high school is the same for me. And one of the questions I'd constantly get as a child from both like adults and my age peers was, "Oh, have you taken an art class?" And I used to get very offended at that question. I felt it was very invalidating. Like, no, I'm self-taught. All of my skills are my own. Then I look back and I'm like, what was I so arrogant about? I couldn't draw a straight line with a ruler with a gun to my head.
I was the same way. I had that exact same mentality towards people asking me that question. And it's only now that I do look back and think I've improved a lot because of the fact that I've taken art classes, because they helped me see things that I didn't know I wasn't even aware of. There's that saying where it's a wise man, I can't remember exactly how it goes, but it's something like a wise man knows how little he knows, or something like that.
Yeah.
And now I know that, but back as a kid, I was an idiot and arrogant, and I may have improved even faster if I had formally taken some art classes. But I've come a long way, and now that I've taken some formal ones, I've gotten to a point in my life that where I want to take this is, first off, I am in love with the idea of world building and creating stories and characters. And a lot of what I have been doing really finds its roots in that particular subject. I have a world that I'm writing stories about. I have characters that I love and hate and love to hate. And a lot of this I do feel is paying an homage to Brian Jakes' Redwall series because I do prefer animal characters. I love the fantasy settings. I don't think I love books like Lord of the Rings where it's people and humans, but there's something about animals that just feels more accessible to a broader audience, in my opinion. Not for the sake of, oh, it's kiddish, therefore, kids can watch it, but just that animals are kind of something we can universally communicate certain aspects with. And so there may be certain things that I could subvert to fool people, or I could play up to really drive home a certain point. And that's why I've started to lean into the idea of animal fantasy for the stuff that I want to create myself. I'd love to eventually publish a book of mine. I'd love to turn one into a comic series if possible, or very, very long-term goals, create an animated movie. I'm going to school for animation, and so if that could be a thing, I would die happy.
That's great. It's definitely had an impact.
hmm
And on that note, Redwall just seems like such a good starting point for a lot of literature-wise writing, artistry, visual. It inspires a lot of talent. Do you think, of all the names in the ROC that stick out, all the artwork come out of the ROC, the community, the support, the subject matter, what do you feel? How do you think? Why do you think the community is such an attraction to artists, both new and old, experienced, I should say?
that's an excellent question. I personally think that art is a transcendent form of communication. I'm gonna get really intense here, but art is a communication that connects beyond hearing. It can connect beyond even sight because art can be texture and feeling, or physical substance, or sound. It can be all these different forms. It can communicate through time. We can see ancient drawings and suddenly understand that people in the past were very much like us. Or it can communicate past language barriers where I can draw something. This is a short anecdote, but I volunteered as an English teacher in China for a semester in 2017, and uh, one of the days that my students loved the best was when I would bring in a set of DVDs so we could watch BBC's Merlin, and I was teaching third graders, so they didn't have like super good communication skills in English, and I would have to translate things for them. But instead of using words, which I was still, teaching them the English, but in order to communicate the exact concept, I could draw on the board and explain things, and they were just enraptured by this. It was the one day of the week that the kids would willingly take notes of what I was teaching them because they understood it more. And I think they learned more from the days where we were just watching a show than any of my other lessons. And so I think that art is such a beautiful way to connect people from around the world. It can communicate multiple things at the same time, or different things to different people. It can be contradictory that it means one thing, but also not that thing. And I think that's a really great way to do that. I've got this character that I've been working on designing and trying to solidify a style for. And, my original drawing of him, he's kind of puffy and round and squishy feeling, and he feels kind of like a retro cartoon character. But then my next iteration, I did a kind of more sketchy and loose thing, and it felt more along the lines of those old animated shows where you could see the drawing lines where they had drawn their character and then painted over it. I think a good example of that would be like Disney's Robin Hood with the fox and bear characters. You can see the lines of how they were drawn, and that communicates a completely different message than the original. And then I tried a different style where he's a very sharply drawn character with hard edges, clean lines, blocky form, and now he feels incredibly grounded, he's like a brick wall. And then I tried another one where it was like a painting and it was aged to look like a photograph, but he looks completely different because it's a more realistic and gory and deep approach to him. And every single one of these is the same character, but the art communicates so many different things that have just built through the ages of the language of art. And I think that is the power of art. And so I think when it comes to the Redwall online community and the artist and the draw of it and everything, I think the transcendence of art being a form of connection is something that really draws people in. And Brian Jakes was this originator of Redwall who created, yes, he wrote a book. It's a literary work, but it's not the words, like the literal letters typed out on the page that make it so near and dear to so many people. It's the fact that it communicates a common desire in a lot of people for beautiful things, peace in life, victory of good over evil. It's long-term transcendent friendships and bonds of allies and working together, and then adventures, and obviously you can't leave out the feasts. Everyone drools over his feasts descriptions, and that's not because of just the letters written on the page. That's because of the idea communicated in the art of the story. And so I think he provided a platform for people to gather over these common aspects, which has just taken off and continued. And I think that's why it lives on to this day with artists who really like to dig in and express themselves, is they have an example and emulate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, I could not have asked for a better answer. Yeah, art is transient. It's transient. It's more instinctual in its communication. There's a deepness to it that simple language and even like, gosh, hand gestures and posturing and certainly text just cannot transcribe. I mean, we as humans, we preserve art so with such dedication, and there's like, yeah, there's a historical aspect, but then there's also just the appreciation for it. I've seen the Mona Lisa. I've been to the Louvre in Paris. It's I honestly, in my opinion, it is an underwhelming painting, but at the same time, it affects so many people. People obsess over this. The Louvre protects it. Literally, those guards will protect it with their life. Um,
Mm-hmm.
oh gosh, what are they called? Gosh, I'm drawing a blank, but the very famous cave paintings in France.
Oh yeah, the ones that they made that duplicate of. Is that the one you're talking about?
Think so. But yeah, they were discovered and they're like off Lascaux, I think.
Mm.
Cave of now, what's it? Rook Rusador, I think, is the one with the handprints, and I think now, yeah, if I'm even pronouncing that correctly, is the one with the animals. But like these are like ancient things. They like literally precede civilization.
Mm-hmm.
Before we were civilized, we were making art, and we do our damnedest to preserve.
Exactly.
There's cliff paintings in Canada, the Native Americanization, and for once again before, I don't want to say civilization, but before human connection was so easy to attain, and obviously civilization. But when you wanted to go see someone and trade, right, you literally had to canoe up a river for several days. These
Mm-hmm.
paintings were messages to travelers and also like the history of the locals. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, again, we do our damnedest to preserve it. We're fascinated by this art. It's styles may be ephemeral. Art itself is not going anywhere anytime soon. I'd be
Exactly.
very sad if it did. So we know you want to get into animation. That's right.
Yeah. So I have a lot of goals in my life. I'm an ambitious person, probably more than I should be, just for the health factor of it and getting obsessed with things. But I have huge plans. I'm currently in school for animation and game development, and just recently an opportunity opened up for my final project that I'm going to be doing, that I can springboard my dream from, and my professors are on board. It's been a struggle uphill to get them on board, but now that they're pretty convinced, and they're even arguing my case for, uh, you know, upper management and the board members to be able to allow it, because it's just such a huge project that I want to do. um, I hope to be able to present that publicly in, a year or so once I've graduated, but for the time being, I have to keep it a little hush-hush. But yeah, so my dream goal would to be eventually have my own studio where I get to make animated movies and follow that passion. I want to be an animator. I love bringing life to art.
And wow, I'm so happy that you actually have ambitions. And like, so many people start as artists and then they're just so dissuaded by the reality of how difficult it is, how much work you put in, how much you always have to be improving, and how difficult it is to not only be good at it, but just be recognized with your talents. And as a woman, have you witnessed, or have you been subjected to any kind of prejudice simply because of your gender?
I don't tend to focus on that because to me, if I were to focus on what other people think at all, then it would be completely consuming. I'd be overwhelmed and because everyone's going to have an opinion. I can't please everyone, but if I know that I'm doing right by myself, then I know that I'm doing what is good and what I care about. And so people do talk about like, oh, women in the industry struggle and whatnot. And I'm like, I might have struggles, but I don't care if it's because I'm a woman. I'm going to fight through it anyways. And other people are like, oh, you need help to succeed because you're a woman. And I'm like, no, it's not because I'm a woman. I might need help just because I may not know everything. And I tend to focus on what I'm accomplishing over why I'm accomplishing it, or the reasons I'm being held back or anything like that. And so I have run into people who are sexist in my life, and I just don't care to give them the time of day. They're not worth my, you know, attention. If I don't give them attention and I prove them wrong, I think that's just poetic justice.
That, yeah, absolutely. Well, I really actually like that. Was a really nice answer. Just to ignore the bad, focus on the positive, and just focus on what you're doing rather than who you're doing it for. That's really nice. Honestly, that is inspirational. I mean, I've run the gamut of interesting careers. I've gone service industry. I did
Mhm.
law career for several years before I got into environmental studies. And throughout the entire process of me finding what I wanted to do, yeah, I've run into a lot of gender bias. But at the same time, yeah, it's so easy to get angry and to want to fight someone. But at the same time, it's like, if I can overcome this prejudice against me, wouldn't it just be so delightful to dangle that in front of their faces? Like, look at me, you doubter.
Exactly. And there's so much effort that would have to be put into fighting it instead of just proving it wrong by doing it anyways. That I don't want to put in the effort to prove somebody or to fight somebody on it. I'm just going to prove them wrong.
Fantastic. Now, in your animation and your ambitions of art, what's your preferred mediums? I know animation these days is pretty much all digital. I don't think there's studio in North America, and I mean South Korea is really big on animation too, and Japan, of course. I don't think there's any mainstream studios that still do hand drawn animation. But what's your preferred media? And of course, based on that answer, do you think there's still a place for hand drawn animation in the world?
Gotcha. Yeah, you're opening up a can of worms that I could go on for days about, but I'll try to keep it concise. Um, I am absolutely in love with the organic feeling of 2D and traditional animation. Uh, the way that each frame is just it's manually created uh, by somebody. You pause one of those old movies, that's animated by Disney, and somebody created that. That's out there. That I think they keep this. A lot of the cells are still stored away on Disney's premises, and that's a physical piece of art that I think is just amazing to consider. And so I'm personally, if ever I do get to own my own studio, I would want to be able to create at least some parts of it in a traditional esque way there are a lot of tools nowadays developing that really help speed along that process and make it much more accessible to the average person, which I don't think I'd be where I am today if I weren't born in the age that I am. There's tools nowadays that they could only dream of back in the day. And I plan on exploiting that to Kingdom Come to make sure that I can produce really great content in a way that's also affordable, both in time and money. Um, so 2D animation is my passion. I, oh god, I love 3D animation. It's very amazing what they can accomplish with it. It just doesn't quite have as much appeal to me as possible. But if I do on my own studio, I might have multifaceted projects. Some might be 2D, some might be 3D, whatnot. There are some companies that are I know of, I think, one company off the top of my head that is still doing a lot of hand drawn stuff, and I think it's Cartoon Saloon. They did the movie Wolfwalkers recently. Um, oh, they did Song of the Sea, The Breadwinner, and The Secret of Kells, which, as somebody who's into Redwall, a lot of their work really appeals to me because it's kind of a lot of it's fantasy-esque, medieval. It's got a lot of those sorts of elements to it, so that's a real big draw. Um, and oh, call. Can you remind me of the rest of your question?
Sure.
Mhm.
What kind of like your medium that you primarily use? Um,
Gotcha.
which one do you and like obviously why? Why of all the other mediums, why is your primary medium your primary medium?
Right. Okay. So I do prefer working digital because I don't like getting a bunch of like paint or ink or whatnot on my hands. But I do work mainly 2D. I currently use Photoshop, but I do also, I'm leaning into 3D as part of my program that I'm learning things for. I can sculpt in 3D, and texture and light and all of those sorts of aspects of creating a proper scene or character in that medium. And I feel like I could easily merge those two with the tools that are available nowadays. It's just a matter of taking the time to learn them. So those are the things that I really want to emulate and build up as I go on with developing my skills.
Right. I'm actually glad that you pointed out there is a stand animation. Wolfwalkers, I totally forgot it existed until you said the words. It's a fantastically beautiful animation, and I remember seeing just a clip of it on YouTube as I was scrolling through, and I immediately had to scroll back up and say, what the heck is this? Because it just struck me as so beautiful. And there is
Hmm.
something very organic about the hand-drawn animation, like you were mentioning earlier. Disney's Robin Hood, The Rescuer, um,
Oh yeah.
101 Dalmatians is like actually quite. It looks like a very sketchy movie, like it isn't finished because it's such a literally sketchy animation
Hmm.
process. And there's also there's movies. There's a lot you can do with 2D animation that you can't really do with 3D animation. And part of me for
Hmm.
saying this, I know you are leaning towards 2D animation, but I find most 3D animation these days looks the same as the next movie. And with Disney's coming out with like wonderful films like Big Hero 6 or Big Hero 8, I actually forgot which number it is, but it's a great story. It's just it looks a lot like say Frozen, or
Hmm.
it looks a lot like How to Train Your Dragon from DreamWorks. Another
Hmm.
great tale, but eventually all 3D animation. There hasn't been a lot of change in the style, and like I was saying earlier, the styles come and go, at least art. But with 2D animation, there's tricks you can do. Like I don't know if this is still a tactic that's used, but the studio that became significantly used to do this trick where they had I think it's called two take and three take, and it was a way they'd put things on a foreground and then the background. It was stereoscopic, so you'd actually have a
Hmm.
character on its own cell, then part of the background, then another part of the background. And when you're watching The Last Unicorn, you can tell which parts are two part or yeah, 2 page and 3 page. And
Hmm.
I know that movie is hated, but honestly, the
Yeah.
animation I love it. I know it gets a lot of flack, especially the unicorn actual horsey design and her huge side. And I think that's also just comes from there's this North American prejudice against anime in the 80s. And so I think that if that movie came out now and it was refined and it still used that style, it would be critically acclaimed for its artwork. Whereas 3D, you don't really hear critically acclaimed art, critically acclaimed animation. You hear, we came up with this new technology. So did The Lion King for the opening scene with the ants and the zebra going in and out of focus based on the depth perception, and of course the wildebeest too. Like, you can still use 2D animation and technology together. Do you think? I mean, you want to incorporate 2D animation, 3D. Do you think 2D animation is going to ever see like a revival and come back into favor of digital animation?
I don't know if it will ever overtake 3D because of the cost effectiveness of being able to just build 3D assets that can be reused over and over, because, it's all completely built out and you never have to rebuild that from scratch. But I do believe that 2D has a place in our public consciousness because it is accessible to anyone who wants to put it into practice. The program that Studio Ghibli uses for their animations, it's free. I have it on my computer, and it's called OpenTunes for anyone who cares to look into it. It's built up like a traditional animation studio would have been set up, but all just self-contained in a software. And the fact that it's free means I could let my niece, who has, never got on a computer and drawn before, I could let her come over and she could just start animating and learning how to do it without any cost to her, without any cost to me. It would just be her having fun, and suddenly it could be a skill she grows into. And I think that that's why 2D is never going to go away. It may never overtake 3D again, but it is still really well loved by many people. And a lot of in my cohort of peers for my program at school, a lot of them are really into 2D. It's surprising how many are saying the same sort of things that you are about 3D is nice and all, but it all looks kind of homogenous. It's not really changing or pushing visual boundaries. Technical, yes, it's fantastic that way. But when it comes to the visuals, it's the stuff like wolf walkers that blows people's socks off, not, oh, just another 3D movie that has the exact same character shapes and whatnot from Disney. Disney's fantastic. I've loved their work, but something's lost in the magic when you just use a computer to continually do all the work for you. And you can kind of see that when it this is probably a discussion for another day, but the Lion King, the new remake of it, the live remake as they call it, no, it's completely computer animated. It's animation, not live action. It doesn't have the same magic as the original, and there's something that just gets lost when it's just a computer creating an image that's super hyper realistic. It doesn't even hyper realistic art that people have done themselves with their hands has something different to it. Almost like a soul, as cheesy as that sounds.
No, I absolutely agree. That is the word for it. Hand-drawn art, created art. It
Exactly.
does. It has a soul. Part of the artist goes into it, and you can see that. Whereas digital animation, as gorgeous and as impressive as it may be, like, there's just something missing from it. And I think that's actually part of the reason the Lion King remake failed. So when you have pure 3D animation, no matter how hyper realistic, no matter how gorgeous it is, I do appreciate the beauty of the Lion King. But at the same
Exactly.
time, if the animation is like, you look at it and you're like, okay, cool, realistic. It's not a style anymore. It's realistic, and now you have to have a purely story-driven story. And if the story isn't good, it doesn't work. Not saying The Lion King isn't a good story. Honest Christ, it's one of my favorite films to this day, if not my most favorite film. But in the case of The Lion King, they're just spitting out scripts that we've already heard. We've heard since I think it was 1995 and early 90s either way. And it's okay, it's great. Like Beyonce's great. John Oliver Zazu, that was great. But we've heard these lines before, and now they're just being delivered by someone else. And without the emotion behind the animation, it fails. It falls flat. And then
Exactly.
you have like something like Zootopia. Zootopia is an incredible animation, but it still follows that kind of Disney's leaning towards anime style, which is great. I'm so glad they got over the prejudice of the 80s. But at the same time, those animal characters still look very similar to all the characters in Frozen, all the characters in How to Train Your Dragon. And it's, like the technology's there. With digital animation, you can have hundreds of characters in a single frame, whereas hand-drawn animation, that's still out of moolah, and it's going to give someone carpal tunnel syndrome.
Just a bit.
There's just hand-drawn gives you a little bit of leeway that digital animation doesn't give you. If you have a hand-drawn animation and the story's only 6 out of 10, if the animation is 10 out of 10, you're not going to remember those lost 4 points. You're going to think, wow, I want to draw those characters now. I want to get into drawing. That was amazing. It's going to stick with me. Whereas 3D animation, if the story's a 6 out of 10, the animation's 10 out of 10, who cares? I've seen this animation before. It doesn't impress me anymore.
It's true. You've nailed it on the head.
Good. I actually want to. It really is true. Hand-drawn animation has. And speaking of pouring our heart and soul into something, I want to steer us towards something that is incredibly exciting to me. I am super stoked about this epic contest you have initiated in the RC. You're giving away prizes. You're composing riddles. You're giving me hope here. Tell us about the tapestry giveaway.
Absolutely. Oh god, where to start? So obviously,
when did it start and when it ends? That's a good place to start.
Good point. It started. Oh god, I'm so bad at dates. It started back on the 5th of April, and I was gonna do it on the 1st of April, but I thought that was kind of a cruel joke if I were to do it on April Fool's Day, so I pushed it off to the next Monday. And it will be ending on May 10th. I gave it a little more than a month because I'm also hosting pre-orders at that time. And the giveaway is going to end before the pre-orders do, so that way if you don't happen to win, you can still get a good deal.
That's for me.
I hope that, you've got some luck on your side. I can't guarantee anything, but whatever happens, I hope that you do get your hands on a tapestry.
Cronism.
Right. And so, where this all began, obviously it all began as I was a kid with my obsession with Redwall, but I was at work one day. I was working at a call center, and it wasn't like a business kind of center where you're on calls regularly every single minute you put down the phone and pick it up. No, that wasn't the kind I was at. It was a company specific one, and I would have some occasional downtime where I could just pull out a scrap of paper and start doodling. And one day I was like, I wonder what I could come up with for a design for the Redwall tapestry. And I started sketching and I drew it out, and I was like, I'm going to turn this into a properly colored picture. Did that. And then I started looking around like, there's got to be a way to turn this into a physical item. I want to hang this up on my wall. And I found a company that did them, and I got it produced as a prototype just to see, and I was in love with it. And I couldn't believe how well it turned out for what I had created. And then I started thinking, oh gosh, this design was nice and all, but I didn't give it as much attention as it deserved for a physical object. And so I decided that if I was going to try and get this out to the public in any sort of way, I was going to make it look nice and like something that could be in the Abbey, having artisans work over it for years or whatever. And so that is what I have done for redesigning this for the giveaway. I've increased the detail and the overall shapes, and it just took a while to redesign it, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. And the winner of the giveaway, there is going to be one of the main section of the giveaway. All you have to do to enter is go to my webpage, and I think it's just enter your name and your email address. So I'm not trying, this is literally just a passion project I want to share with people. I'm not trying to like track anybody or steal their information or whatever. This is, I want to share it with the world. So one person will be awarded this tapestry. It's a 60 by 80 inch woven throw that is 100% cotton. I have the original tapestry that I made, and I made myself a family crest, and they're both hanging up, and they make amazing conversational pieces. People come into my house and they immediately see that family crest, and they're like, where did you get that? Who made it? And I'm able to be like, I did that. And it's just such a great feeling. And so I wanted to share something that others might be interested in with them, especially when it's something from a series that's so well loved. And so first, the grand prize is the tapestry. But I got to thinking about it, and I didn't, one prize just didn't seem like it would be enough. I was like, I can't really do more than one of those. They're really kind of a pricey thing to do. Well, what else can I do instead? And I thought about, well, the tapestry is really big. It's not something you can really take on the go and show off your nerdy love of a series. So I decided to scale down, and I cut out Martin, and from the tapestry where he's got that frame of kind of the abbey walls with the bells and ropes around him, I cut that out and figured it could make the perfect lapel pin, enamel lapel pin. And then I got to start kind of fiddling with it a little bit to kind of clean it up, make it nice. And I was like, oh, wait, what if I extract the sword shape from this image and turn that into a pen? And then I was like, oh, that needs a shield to go with it. And eventually it just turned out to be this trio of pins that I thought could interlock with each other or be taken apart. And that is what I decided to do for the secondary prize. For I have it listed for 5 people are going to get one of these pin sets of 3 pins, interlocking or separatable, whichever you prefer to do. And the big main piece is, I think, 3 by 1.5-ish inches. The sword is about 2 inches long, and the shield is about 1-inch circle. So I've got a few prizes available. If you don't want to risk missing out on any of that, you can pre-order either of these. But also, I wanted to find an option that was available to anyone who wanted to enter the contest, but also try and get a prize. So I found this website called Adagio Tea. They offer free samples of their tea, and you can get one from a collection I have created based off of the Redwall series, so it's themed to be in the nature of Redwall. I made one that's supposed to be somewhat similar to October Ale, or I've got character theme ones. I recently got a sample myself of the one I made for Rose of Noonvale, and oh my gosh, it is so nice. The only stipulation about the tea one is that I am not actually the one producing and providing the prizes, quote unquote, for that. That is Adagio Tea, and I can't cover the shipping. It's not very much. The tea tins aren't very big for the samples, but you can get the tea tin for free if you just cover the shipping costs. And as a last bonus, I I knew people were gonna want the tapestry, and it would be really sad if only one person won. I would honestly just love it if I could give every single person who wants a tapestry their own copy, but it's a bit beyond my scope. So I tried to figure out some ways that I could afford to do one more. And I decided that it shouldn't be just that you could only get it by participating in the random giveaway, but I wanted to see the participants who really knew Redwall, who really love the series, compete and prove that they're a big fan of the series, just because I think it's fun to make a little bit of a contest where you have to put in some effort. And what I came up with was I'm doing a series of riddles. One gets released every couple of days for the duration of the giveaway. And at the end, I will be taking all of the answers that I'm getting with the times that they get submitted against the people who are submitting them, averaging it all out, and whoever got the most correct in the shortest amount of time will win a copy of the tapestry.
That's absolutely amazing. There are so many ways to get involved.
Exactly.
I honestly, I was watching you on the Facebook Redwall with 3 exclamation points, and I just, I was looking at your teasers, the old school way of teasing a contest where you release a new little tease every single day. That was hilarious, very old school.
Oh,
And
so old school.
I was wondering what's going on here? What, like, what's happening? And then you finally released the tapestry image in the contest, and it honestly, I my heart melted and then reformed itself into a solid and then exploded all over my chest. I have always wanted the Redwall tapestry. Always. It's such a significant plot device and part of the lore of Redwall. And you go on DeviantArt or Toy House these days, and there's so much good Redwall art, and there's so many amazing renditions of the tapestry. But of course, I feel that perhaps the reason we've never actually had a tapestry or four is because, simply put, the technology hasn't been there yet. It in Redwall, it literally took generations to weave the tapestry. It's an ongoing project. Even a tapestry that is made these days it's a could take up to a year. It could take up to several years.
Oh yeah,
Like,
especially the ones who traditionally produce them where
oh yeah,
they've got the little spindles and they're interweaving them. It's nuts.
yeah, like
I I'm so impressed.
yeah. But I think nowadays is you can send the image in and it can be grafted onto the fabric and printed out a little, coded properly. Like, you can carve designs into wood with a laser nowadays. You just scan an image and then the laser will do the thing. I
Mhm.
don't think it was possible before now, at least the last couple of years, to do this. So I feel vindicated that I'm actually going to be able to own a tapestry.
Yeah, and a point of clarification, this isn't even a print. This is literally woven into the threads of the design that's being produced. Like it's not just the front of it's got the image. It goes through the from front to back the image and you'll get like kind of a reverse image on the back because of the weaving process. So it's not going to be colors that fade because they're ink. It's a dyed cotton thread for this, and it's really quite amazing how that it's accomplished to make these nowadays, and the technology has just blown up, and I'm totally down for exploiting technology to make things nerdy and all things swag.
Yeah, why not, right? Like, we have the technology, let's use it. I want satisfaction, dang it. And especially,
Exactly.
I scrolled further down the page, and my jaw was already on the floor after seeing the tapestry, and then the pins. I'm a brooch auntie. I love my brooches. I love my little blouse gems. Like, I actually stood up with excitement when I saw the pins. And it's a pin within a pin within a pin. That's at least 4 days in a row I could wear this pin. And
Exactly.
it is absolutely fantastic. And again, like, I don't know if, at least in the ROC, I don't know if anyone would have seized the technology before. Like, certainly not back in the 90s, the early 2000s. It just wasn't there. And if you did get your hands on something like that, it would do an art. So to see this, and it's like, I'm so happy. I really am excited about this. I've already decided if I do not win, and there's a good chance I do not win, odds probability. I'm already like I've decided I'm going to order several pins, people that I know that aren't on the ROC that like probably won't join the contest who don't now, but once they get their hands on the pin, they're going to lose their minds and they're just going to be like right back into it.
That's awesome to hear. I'm so excited that people are actually interested in this. I was so nervous that I'd be some weirdo who's just like, oh, why would you do that? But
No,
I'm so glad to hear it.
Absolutely. And I told all my Redwall Survivor friends about this, and everyone's really. There's also, you mentioned you put your email address in to sign up for the tapestry giveaway, and there's also, if you look a little down, there's I think 25 different ways to get an extra bonus mission,
Yep.
and I feel people are gonna miss those just because it's not in bold fonts at the top of the screen. But if you go and you submit your email and you sign up, you can look at posts on Facebook, on Instagram. You can share the post on Twitter. You can answer some fun questions like, what's your favorite vermin character? What's your favorite good beast character? There's so many ways to get involved with this.
Oh, yeah. And people may have been missing those things, and there's certain ways that you can get significantly increased odds to your entry count. If you look through those options, you can answer those questions. If you just want to share a story about something you love in your past about Redwall, a fond memory or an experience you had regarding the series or related to it, you can get an extra 25 entries just for that. It doesn't even have to be long. You don't have to be in the video. Just sharing a short clip of your story. I added that purely because I miss the community and I wanted to hear people's stories. It's pretty silly, but I really love hearing people talk about Redwall, and the more that do, the better, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that one of the goals you had for this? I mean, I do this podcast in an attempt to bring the ROC together, especially after the Netflix announcement. It's really important we get fresh blood, but we also keep the old blood very engaged as well, especially as we get older, we grow up, adulthood. We just don't have the time. What do you want for this contest? What do you hope it'll accomplish?
Well, I really want that. I want the fandom and the community all around Redwall to feel bolstered. I want them to know, like, those people out there. Like, I occasionally run into people who are like, oh, yeah, I remember that series. I really loved it, but nobody seems to talk about it anymore. Well, somebody's got to start talking about it. And I think that the more that individuals like you with your podcast or me with this contest or all sorts of things start to like get involved and share our passion, the odds of us possibly reaching more people and really growing the community increase significantly. I don't think that I ever would have been able to reach as many people as I did if it weren't for these quiet Redwall fans who just haven't really connected with each other. And so for the community itself, it feels like home to me. I don't know if that's nerdy to say or not. It probably is. But there's been amazing people keeping this fandom alive over the years, and it's just a really comforting fandom. It doesn't have clashing and drama like a lot of fandoms you see nowadays where people have disagreements or they have fights over things. I really love the Redwall community for the fact that we all can share this passion. We may come from all sorts of different places, have different opinions, different walks of life, or different age groups. A lot of the people I meet who say they are fans of Redwall, they're much older than me, they're younger than me, they're all over the spectrum of age, personality types, and it's amazing how it's been able to facilitate that. And I think that's one hope that I have for the future, is that with the Netflix series being added, that it will grow into a bigger fandom, but still keep uh, that spirit about it. That I like to joke and call it that kind of spirit of Redwall. That, oh, we're all peaceful and we work together and try to get along, even if we do have our differences. And so I'm gonna try and work towards facilitating that whenever I'm interacting with people, and encourage it when I can. Um, and if it could become some sort of really strong bolstered fandom and retain those qualities, I think it will be the most amazing experience. And I think that, speaking of new developments with that Netflix series, I really hope they stay true to the series and don't. I really don't want them to cut any corners on production. I would be thrilled if they would do the entire series from like a chronological standpoint of all of the Redwall stories as a animated series. I don't know if that's going to happen. That would be my dream. But I really don't want them to cut any corners. It would be incredibly painful to me as an artist if they did that, or to see the lush and vivid world of Redwall stripped into like a lifeless clone or a twisted facsimile of its former self. That's what I want to see happen. We mentioned Studio Ghibli a little bit earlier, but if the quality was on par with Studio Ghibli's kind of work and merged with the world and stories of Redwall, I would die happy. That would be my dream.
Yeah, honestly, everything you said, I can, and you keep saying, oh, it's nerdy, it's nerdy. Yes, it's nerdy, but nerdy's
Oh,
not bad.
absolutely.
Nerdy is a developing hobby, learning in progress, skills learned, connections made, and passions grown. And I think that's why Redwall has such a dedicated fan base. I mean, we're out of the golden years, but with the new Netflix production coming up, hoping we might see a return.
Hmm.
And it is one of those communities that is so supportive and caring. And like you said, the spirit of Redwall. We're not a confrontational bunch. Redwall's a very loosey goosey series in that there's no real set rules. I mean, yeah, okay, good bees versus vermin, but there are deviants there. But at the same time, yeah, there's like no one can settle on a scale of the animal starters. So like, if BJ himself didn't do that, who are we to end friendships over arguing how big a weasel is compared to a mouse?
Exactly.
Yeah, and yeah, there's a lot of passion sticking around there, and
Hmm.
this contest, I'm very partial to it, not only because it's just bloody exciting, but also it does bring back that nostalgic feeling of the creative output of the ROC. There was a time back in the golden age, let's say the early 2000s, where just so many artists were pumping out and learning to do amazing art, and all this incredible fiction, and people were just learning so much. There was a
Hmm.
comment on one of the Facebook groups, Redwall with 3 exclamation points. Somebody asked, "What do you think the robes are made out of that the Abby
Oh,
beasts
yeah.
wear?" And it was like, "Oh, cotton or linen, straw fiber, like who?" And then again,
Hmm.
the feasts. Everybody loves those.
Oh
There's been
my gosh,
entire
yes.
books made Redwall, and then there's YouTube videos that are just like, here, look at this. I made meadow cream, or this is my version of October ale.
Hmm.
Actually, I'm gonna embarrass myself here. I didn't realize the tea advert on the contest actually was Redwall themed. I thought, oh, okay, cool. It's just got like partner sponsor. So now I gotta go check out the tea because Redwall inspired tea just tickles me so much.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people have missed that just because it does look like an advertisement. But the little tins for the samples themselves, they come with a sticker on them of that tapestry. They're not very big. I think they hold about a couple of cups worth of tea mix in them, but it comes with the little sticker on it, and it's just kind of a nice little thing to have in the palm of your hand. And I kid you not, being able to really get a good whiff of the tea, oh, it was just like, I need a rainy day, a hot mug of this tea, and a Redwall book to curl up in a corner with.
Yeah, I actually I can't wait. I'm gonna go check out the tea as soon as we're done here. That just it sounds so romantic, and it really does strike a chord. I consider myself part of the old guard.
Mhm.
If Karn ever comes back, he's gonna chortle very harshly at me. Karn was old back in the day, but I'm probably one of the older ones left. And it's just to see a return to that, not only creative side but the inspiration too, like tea, Redwall themed tea. Yeah, that would be perfect on a rainy day in front of a fire, up with a Redwall book. This
Mhm.
tapestry hanging over me as I'm wearing my pin. Yes, oh yes, this is definitely what Foxy's into.
Oh, absolutely. And, if it's a bit of a chilly day, you could wrap up in that tapestry because it is a fantastic blanket.
The Netflix announcement has obviously stirred up some excitement in the ROC, and we really haven't had a whole lot of excitement. The last Redwall Survivor contest unfortunately got canceled almost right out of the gate because of COVID. It affected so many of the audience members, so many of the contestants itself, the headrunner for Airan. Also there's so much happened in 2020 with like Black Lives Matters movement, and just like the wildfires in Australia, the earthquakes, gosh dang, the tropical storms. We started 2020 out with like 3 hurricanes back to back. It
Man,
was
it's
a tricky
chaos.
year to navigate. And so unfortunately the contest had to fold because of just so many people were affected by 2020. What
Right.
do you hope for the future of Redwall and the ROC? Do you think this Netflix series, hopefully, fingers crossed, doesn't get canned like the Mouse Guard, and hopefully it doesn't get. I was not a fan of the new Watership Down animation.
Oof,
Sorry if
yeah.
that stings you as an aspiring animator, but I think that was kind of a slap in the face to any fans of the Watership Down.
I think that is a perfect example of what we were mentioning earlier about the quality of 3D and the difficulty of really talking to people through that art form in a meaningful full way. But as far as the Redwall community goes, um, I want it to grow. There has been a concerted effort upon the part of um, there's a game studio called Soma Games. They're making Redwall video games.
Oh yeah, let's go.
Um, exactly. They are making a bunch of games, not just the Scout. And behind this, I've kind of pestered them to the point that I'm kind of in their good graces, which is kind of hilarious. I started out just harassing them over and over and over until they were just like, "Oh, it's
Squeaky
Nova again."
wheel. Squeaky wheel.
Exactly. Exactly. And if I, don't achieve certain goals by the time that I graduate, it would be great to get hired on by them full time, just so I could work on something. I would love to get hired for the Netflix
I
animations.
I think that would absolutely help. Yeah, the story and the team. If
Absolutely.
we have people that grew up in the ROC became, I mean, Thule is a voice actor for the Scout.
Hmm.
And if we get animators and voice actors and writers and producers that like actually grew up with Redwall and it is near and dear to them, that will make the Redwall movies, the new series, I think that much more magical. And
Exactly. That would be the best thing for it. We won't grow unless people want to invest in this series. And I think that now that a bunch of these people who grew up on these novels, on the show, on uh, the just whole essence of Redwall, we're all grown up now. We can make something more of these stories that have, unfortunately, after Brian Jakes' passing, they kind of fell quiet. The community has lived on in kind of a quiet state, but it's our job now. Martin didn't leave, Redwall to ruin. He left it for the next generation. Brian Jakes didn't leave Redwall to ruin. It's our job to keep it up. And I think that I want to be a part of that wherever that does take me. It would be fun to join any of the like official projects as a full-time employee, doing those passion projects that I'm into with art and animation, or maybe, hey, if this uh, um, blanket is good enough quality, it'd be fun to become an official merchandiser for anything and all things Redwall swag. I would love to do that, but we'll see how things go. I do want I want the community to put in some work to bring Redwall back to its glory days.
Yeah, wow. Wow, what you said, BJ didn't leave Redwall, he left it to the next generation. That is honestly tugging at my heartstrings. Because it is so darn true. We, the ROC, made the ROC great, but he laid the foundations for our creative growth and our inspirations and our community. And yeah, it is up to us to an extent. It is up to us to keep it going and to grow it. We love it. This is why we are here and doing what we're doing. This is why I have my podcast. This is why Redwall Survivor runs contests. This is why we're reading, and it's like, it's just, yeah, there's something so special about it. If even if the Netflix series and the movie completely atrocious garbage, we still have an obligation to keep the passion of the ROC and the Redwall alive. It is important still, whether they're just discovering Redwall for the first time. And I know that's happening because later on in the show I'm going to do an episode of fiction writers, and I interviewed two fellas that literally, like, one just came into the ROC within years. One also the other one recently just came into it. We're also at the age where, like, us having children, and I want those kids to actually, like, not only just discover Redwall, but have a guide and have someone to encourage the passions that Redwall inspires.
Absolutely.
There's something amazingly magical about Redwall, and just to go back to what you said, it's the spirit of Redwall, and it is in all of us that call ourselves fans. We can't let it fade away into existence. That would be the biggest slap in the face to BJ. He literally made his life telling stories to inspire children to be great. We need to be great to honor him and to honor ourselves and why we love Redwall.
Absolutely. That legacy deserves it.
Yeah, wow. It's spirit of Redwall is real. Martin might not be prancing around in my dreams, but spirit of Redwall is absolutely.
I love that. That's great.
What advice do you have to give new artists? And not just Redwall artists and those coming into the fandom, but anyone who wants to give the old college try. Art is one of those things where, like you were saying earlier, anyone can get into it. And if you try and you progress and you learn, you can become great at it. What advice do you have for people just putting pencil to paper for the very first time?
Sure. I've got a few things I would probably say to them. Um, let's see. I would want any new artist to know that you are more capable than you know, and your skills and talents are worth developing, and you should never let anyone convince you otherwise. Because if you don't listen to the naysayers, you can't fulfill their prophecies, because you'll just be proving them wrong. If you feel overwhelmed, maybe you're like me. I'm a workaholic. I overdo things, and I do too much. I commit to too many projects. But if you ever feel that way, that you're just so overwhelmed, don't hesitate to take a break, but never neglect to start back up. When you look back at the time that you've been developing your skills and those moments when you did feel overwhelmed, you'll see where you made your breakthroughs, and you'll be blown away by how far you have come. So don't give it up. And lastly, I was blessed with a fantastic family who was able to facilitate my creativity. I know that not everybody gets to have that amazing experience, but if you can, surround yourself with artists who lift each other up and who openly share their talents and knowledge, and you need to be open to it in return, because the people who build each other up, they're only going to reach higher and higher. They'll be soaring through the clouds of talent and achievement. But remember, those who tear each other down will never get off of the ground. So please, try to be the kind of artist that is uplifting and encouraging to others. Even if you don't feel like you're the best artist, you can learn, you can grow. You have that ability, and you can help others achieve it too. So that would be my advice to any artist, Redwall or otherwise.
And it is stellar advice. Absolutely follow it. That is one of the reasons I stuck around the ROC for so long. It is such a supportive community. Any criticism I've ever received out of the ROC has been intentionally constructive, and people have wanted to help me get better. Whether it's my writing or my art, I'm just a hobby artist. Like, it's still a very pleasant pastime for me, and I do want to get better. It doesn't, right? But
Yeah.
it's just the ROC is something that if you need to surround yourself with supportive people because you're not actually getting it in person, there is this wonderful community. And even if you're not involved with the Redwall aspect, even if you're not into anthropomorphic animals, you don't have to be a furry. Just like come on in and say hello, and there will be people that if you just have a sketchbook of sketches, there's gonna be at least one person who's gonna get down on their hands and knees and beg line art. They can print off 20 copies, just like little Nova did, and color in the lines. And there's gonna be people who want you to you should try coloring, learn how to flat cell shade, learn how to do crazy lighting effects. You should try this layers, and this program's really good. And from there, you might just discover not just like art as a hobby, but as a passion. And even to build upon that, you might discover a different passion that's been lying in wait for you. There's people in the ROC that they've gone from just forum post by post role playing to published authors. There's folks that have just discovered, hey, if I mixed iced tea with lemonade, I'll call it October Ale, and they really like it. And then they're all of a sudden they're professional chefs in their adult. There's folks that have become computer programmers and program builders because they wanted to change the font color on the old Easy Point. Like, it's such a supportive community that you're going to find something to love about it, and that is going to take you in so many different wonderful directions. And you can always still just turn to the ROC for that support. It's so important to so many people.
I
And
agree.
yeah, you need the support. The ROC is here.
For sure. This has been such a fun conversation.
So Nova, we're gonna wrap this up. I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here with Penmanship. This has been an absolute privilege to have. I have honestly learned a little bit about myself. Your talent, your generosity, your creativity, just your involvement with the ROC is not only encouraging, but it is inspiring. I honestly feel that you are going to be one of those people that when people think of the ROC, they're going to think, I hope to see many more great things from you in the future. And honestly, I'm just so happy to have met you, even if it's only this one time.
I hope it's not. I hope that we can eventually meet up. I have ideas for the future for possible something. I'll give a little sense of what the idea is. I think we need a proper community Redwall feast at some point. If I can facilitate that, I hope to.
Oh my gosh, that is honestly, oh my gosh, I'm ready. That would be epic. I mean, who knows when this bloody COVID mess go away, but even if we have to just all make ourselves a lovely plate at home and sit down for dinner, I am up for it.
Absolutely. I mean, we'll get through it. Lomehedge, they may have had to up and move, but what came out of their experience was Redwall. So, we can get out of our plague and do things in a way that it's a form of growth, some sort of improvement from where we are currently, and we will make the most of it, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nova. For our listeners, remember to enter NovaNocturne giveaway at novanocturne.art/home/giveaway. Will actually take you right to the page. Good luck to everyone entering the contest, and of course, good luck to you in all your ambitions. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate that. Good luck, everybody. Hope to have you join in. Thanks.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed my interview with NovaNocturne. We're truly, truly blessed to have such wonderful participants from the ROC and such talents come onto the show. Let's move on to the next guest.
I'm here with Airan, owner-manager of Redwall Survivor, headrunner of the Mossflower Odyssey contest, and artist. Welcome, Airan. Thanks for being here. How's it going today?
It's going pretty good. How are you doing today?
I'm absolutely wonderful. Thanks for asking. My guts are stapled in, and I'm holding up very well. Yes, for our listeners, I just had some surgery, hence the little dark joke there. Don't worry. So, we know Aaron's favorite book is Mossflower. He has revealed this tidbit of information about him in the past. However, how did you first get into Redwall? Did you discover the books first, or maybe you heard a radio program or the Canadian television show? How did you get hooked?
Random chance. So it was third grade, and I just so happened to get the first Redwall book from my parents as a Christmas gift. Just saw it, read through it because I had it, and was hooked by the end of it. And then from there, I was like, "Hey, Mom, can we go to the bookstore? I want to get the second one on this list of Redwall books," and that was Mossflower. And so from there, the rest is kind of history. I just kind of devoured them all from there.
Ah, so it was a gateway.
Yes.
Little did they know an innocent Christmas present would turn into an addiction.
It would turn into an addiction, a art focus, a guy but now running a community hub and writing forum dedicated to that novel,
Now, on that note, so our audience knows, because I've known you for years, but not everyone has, what is it that you do for a living there?
For a living right now? I'm like, I don't really have a set career right now. It's a lot of me sort of finding my place right now. But the job I work currently is I'm working at a landscaping company. So general picking up the yards of a bunch of people and making sure they look nice and stuff like that.
But you do have a side gig as an artist, do you not?
Sort of. I take like commissions and things like that when I'm able. It's not like totally consistent or anything like that, but just whenever I'm able to do it, I do it.
Yeah, that's pretty good though.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, I totally acknowledge it is hard to make it in the art world, and I do landscaping myself from time to time.
Oh yeah, and the big dream though, of course, is I want to do a graphic novel or a comic series.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so combine the whole writing talents with the art talents, and then create an ongoing story that's interesting, stuff like that.
Yeah. So what got you into art to start with?
I wish I knew. I've been drawing for a really long time. At least elementary school sometime. I think it was 4th or 5th grade when I like really got into like drawing a lot and creating characters and stuff like that. And like creating storylines and stuff like that. One of the the first thing I can think of is I won't go like too in depth with it, but I had a situation like in my life where like I was sort of alone a lot, and this meant that it gave me a lot of time just as a kid to like be more active in my in my thoughts rather than like like physically moving around and stuff. So I just did a lot of thinking more than playing and things like that. And so I remember like to pass the time and like starve off boredom and things like that. I would like create these different stories in my head, and I would like literally, and this sounds kind of weird, but like I'd take like my my index finger and like my middle finger and like pretend it was like the legs of a guy, and then like make another one with my right hand, and they like fight each other and stuff, and I'd create storylines and stuff like that for it, and it turned into this whole stupid storyline that was basically Power Rangers but like worse because it was made by an elementary school kid. And I remember drawing some of these characters that I came up with, and from there I just met a couple people, and from there I just started drawing whatever came to mind. I liked art classes a lot in elementary school and things like that, and from there around, I guess, 7th grade, I met a guy named Mickey Snow, who is who on the Survivor forums is Robert Rosequill. And we kind of hit it off in terms of creative stuff, and got really interested in like making comics and things like that. So that's kind of where we got into character design and making up these storylines and coming up with worlds and stuff like that.
That's adorable. I mean, that's really cute. Like the imagination of a child, and it's just playing with your little stick man with your own figures, and then it becomes like, I want to make a comic.
Oh yeah. They got crazy. I got pretty crazy into the choreography of those fights, man.
So you mentioned you met Robert Rosequill. Did that happen to be before or after you entered the world of the ROC?
It was before. Not too long before. So I didn't have a computer in like 7th and 8th grade and things like that. But I did, and this is another weird, funny story. I did have a Sony PSP though, and that thing had an internet browser, and so that was my computer. And it didn't really like I couldn't really do much on it because it was just like a handheld gaming device basically. But like I could browse like different websites and stuff. Anyways, because my sister was like super into fan fiction and stuff like that, I was like, I'm gonna go to fan fiction too. And just because I liked Redwall, I was like, I'm gonna go to the Redwall fan fiction page, and that's kind of where I fell into the ROC. I ended up reading Midnight Mossflower 1 on there, which is how I got into Survivor. Among a couple of other stories, like some of High Wing stuff, I think was beginning to start around the time. I can't remember what his pen name was, but on fanfiction. But I read some of the stories from Alex Kane on there, who is the writer for Beyond the Western Deep. He had some Redwall fan fictions up around the time. I think one of the stories was called The String Snapped. That was one I read. But yeah, that's kind of around when I fell into the ROC and began to kind of meet people and embarrass myself for a little while until I started to find who I really was at the time.
Yeah, we were children. We could not be embarrassed.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Like I've never actually well, I did meet a few people way back in the day that just so happened to be like my school, but they were never part of the ROC, and you actually got to meet someone. Did you and so like you say you got into fan fiction and then Midnight Mossflower, and that's what brought you into the ROC, but like how did you, I'm curious as his relationship with Rosequill, how did you and him wind up both in it? Did one of you discover a forum or were you just both into the fan fiction and it was possibly really nice just to have a friend there?
So Robert's actually not ever really been too into Redwall. He's it's not like he doesn't like it or anything, but it's kind of like he didn't really grow up with it. He grew up with the Warriors books, and we also hit it off like because we were both reading those books at the same time. Um, but I just so happened to, I had told him about Redwall and stuff and conversations before. But anyways, I found Midnight Mossflower and I was like, dude, you should read this. It's like, even if you don't think Redwall's, haven't read Redwall, I mean, it's still pretty interesting story, And, me and him are like middle schoolers at the time. So, our knowledge of art and culture is like very limited, and we're like, yeah, this is the coolest thing ever, and I still hold that belief. Midnight Mossflower is one of the coolest things ever, but the we ended up reading that, and then around the same time, it just so happened that like I guess when I started reading Midnight Mossflower, it was like around week 7 or 6 or 7 into the contest. And Nalmian had died at this point. Spoiler alert, I'm sorry. But Nalmian's author, who most people know now as Zevka, went and wanted to make his own contest, and that became Redscape. And so Redscape had its own private forum, and basically, I guess I found the Redscape forum through the Midnight Mossflower forum and made the account, which it became my name, Airan. Yeah, the rest is history. I existed on that forum, embarrassed myself with some very crappy applications, and basically read Redscape as it came out and got super invested in the Survivor scene. Robert also applied because I convinced him. I was like, dude, don't you want to do this? It sounds super cool. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. And he also wrote some crappy applications with me. So neither of us made it in, but no big deal. He kind of fell out of the Survivor thing after that, but I kept into it and kept applying and trying for different contests. So I applied for Red Venture 5, which didn't make it in, but I think I learned a lot about application writing from there. And then later, I guess it was about a year after Redscape, I applied for Emperor's Decree 1 and made it in by happenstance, like pure coincidence that I made it into this contest. It wasn't a good application. I got in as Nemec Allen, and like universally panned application from the reviews and stuff. But it just so happened my two competitors in the category I was in won separate categories and chose to write those characters instead. So I was the only choice.
You know what? You still made it in, though. That counts for something.
Yes.
Don't put yourself down.
Yeah, and I'm happy that I made it in, because those moments, well, that moment of getting in, even though I also, spoiler alert, died first. That 2 weeks where I got to write those like 3 posts that I got taught me a lot about writing and collaborating and working with these people and learning how the Survivor scene worked. And then about 6 or 7 months later, Redwall Revolutions came out. I wrote an application this time that was universally loved and got in like by my own merits this time and got 4th place of 12. So
wow, quite the improvement.
Yep, pretty nice.
And all that became just because your sister liked fan fiction and you just wanted to check it out.
Yep. It's crazy great. Kind of how this kind of stuff works,
So your parents gave you the Gateway book, and then your sister gave you the Gateway website, and we've been seeing you ever since around the corner.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's really a great story, though. I love the development, how you went from like your so-called bad applications. And I don't believe there's a bad application. There's only learning experience.
Ooh, do I need to share them?
No. I mean, you totally can.
If I can find them.
It's great though. Like you go from like not even becoming close to like lucking your way in, and then you still feel proud and you take those lessons and then you use that and then you just go further every time.
Yeah.
Around sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's just when you're determined to do something, if you keep working towards it, you'll eventually get it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what practice is, right? Practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
And I mean, any author will agree that you could always use more practice. I mean, I've myself made it into several contests, and I've had varying degrees of success. But I always feel that I've learned something when I come out, and I think that's one of the important influences these contests have on people. And because you're running them, you're an influencer. Haha, your dirty habit's our habit now. So I've learned about your writing, but I want to know how much has Redwall and the ROC influenced the artwork in your life when you were first starting out versus even now?
So throughout middle school and high school, I was like super big into, as you can expect from any middle and high school artist, I was a big anime guy. I was I was trying to teach myself how to draw anime, and so all those stories I made with Robert, we were like trying to turn it into like this anime comic, and make it super cool and all that. But I don't know. I think literally in high school, I just kind of got back into Redwall due to the ROC and just started wanting to learn how to draw like anthro characters and things like that. I just always liked the appeal of the characters. Anyway, I mean, things like Disney's Robin Hood have always appealed to me.
Of course.
Call me a furry if you want, but
that's the movie that suckers a lot of us in.
Yeah. But I mean, I've always like kind of liked those character designs anyway. I mean, Robin Hood, Nintendo's like Star Fox and things like that. Just really interesting character designs that you can play a lot with. And over time, I've like found a lot of different anthro stories that I think like really push for really interesting characters and worlds and stuff like that. Zootopia, of course, Netflix's Beastars. There's a really good comic called Black Sad, which Black Sad is very much rated R. So just warning you for anybody who checks it out. But Black Sad is like has some really great anthro character designs and world building and stories and things like that. But yeah, I just got super interested just once I got back into the ROC and just started drawing different characters. I don't think I really started drawing a lot of anthro art until MO3, but I did dabble in it a little bit. But I think there was like a stigma too, because I was pretty like had some social anxiety issues throughout middle and high school. So like I didn't really like sharing my art with people. I think it was because like I was like this nerdy kid who drew like anime and Naruto and sword guys and stuff like that. So like I didn't want to get like made fun of for what I was drawing. So like I also didn't draw too many animal characters because I didn't want to like be seen as weird or something.
Yeah,
so
it's high school is a little cruel.
Yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes I'd be drawing and people would be like, "Oh, you're drawing animals in pants. You're a furry." And then sometimes people would see my drawing and be like, "Wow, that's incredible. Can you draw a rabbit in pants next?"
Oh yeah. I literally this is actually a memory that's stuck with me for a while, but I literally got made fun of by my own cousin once for who had a class with me in I think it was 8th grade or something, who was making fun of my art because I was big into Naruto at the time. And so one of my characters in the comic I was working on with Robert and stuff had a headband that he wore. And so they were like making fun of me for liking Naruto. But like so like I don't know, I was kind of like self-conscious about it, but like once I left high school I kind of realized like I really don't care anymore what people think about my art. So I just started drawing whatever the heck I wanted. I think joining, starting MO3 and kind of beginning to foster like a new survivor scene helped a lot because it gave me this sort of almost fresh identity to where I could kind of be whoever I wanted to be. So no one really knew too much about who I was before like MO3, so it was kind of like, cool, I'm just gonna draw all the characters of MO3. I'm sure they'll like that,
And they did.
Yeah, so I did character portraits for MO3, and then learned a lot about digital art and drawing anthro characters, and from there I've only gotten a little bit better from there. Just kind of learning a bit about how to draw all these crazy proportions and how to make different animals reflect different characteristics, and I don't know, it's been a lot of fun.
That's great, and that's a fun story. If you hadn't just told me, I never would have realized that MO3 is when you started drawing anthro and working in digital, because you are very talented, and I did miss MO3, but the artwork is still there in the forums at redwallsurvivor.com. And like it's pretty good stuff. It's professional level, and yeah, that was fantastic. The art, because I missed the contest itself, but I've read the story, or I'm reading the story at long last, and the art is there, and it's so motivating to look and be like, look at all this amazing work the contest runner himself has done. This shows dedication.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. I don't want to like toot my own horn or anything too, but like I was really like, I was like really learning how to do digital art at the time, and like really didn't know what I was doing for some of the first portraits. I had just at the time I had just been into SCAD in Georgia, so the Savannah College of Art and Design, and my dad had died of a illness, so I got a lot of life insurance money, and as a result, I had about $3,000 that I could spend, and I was like, I'm gonna buy a big giant Cintiq tablet because that's what professionals use, and then I'm about to go to art school, so I can learn digital art and like really learn stuff. So this is like right when I got my Cintiq and started working with it and learning it. But you have like, and I don't know what you can do with your editing or not, but we have the very first portrait I did of MO3, which was for Thule Baste, who looks like that and is okay. Kind of a bit misrepresentative of his character in the end, but a pretty good first start. But then we get to like when I finally got to Captain Blade, the villain of MO3, and like the improvement that I got over just 1 year of digital art, where like I'm learning all these like lighting effects and how to like better proportions for characters and like stronger facial expressions and things like that. Just I learned so much just in this little spree of going from that one portrait to the last one, which funnily enough I did a as a Christmas gift for Thule a while back. Thule's author, I actually went back and redrew the Thule portrait and made it a lot better and more representative of the character. I have it somewhere. I need to find it. Yeah, here it is. I finally let me save it and put it in the Discord chat for us. But
sure, I'm gonna throw that up on the video so all our viewers can see your magnificent work.
Yeah, and then this is the new Thule that I did later. But the
that's great. It's different, but it's so still distinctly you. And there's like visible, like, yeah, you've learned stuff in between.
Oh yeah, yeah. I learned a lot more about like character expressions and how to better find my style doing all this. Just playing around and learning different, just experimentation. Because like one thing I learned doing some of these portraits is which you can actually see it in this last Thule portrait, is I did a lot of cheating where I would go onto Google and I would look up like textures. So like I found like a sort of it looks like I don't know what kind of clothing texture I used here, but it was some kind of clothing, and I would like basically layer it over his vest here and like lower the opacity on it, and it would give the vest a actual clothing texture as if it like had it. Which I'm getting to the point now where I can kind of just paint that in now without having to rely on like using Google Images. But like that was like something I kind of like taught myself how to do, where I was like, hey, that's an interesting little shortcut that makes it, adds a little bit more stuff to it, a little bit more interesting.
Makes it dynamic. You say cheating, I say technique.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah, so dare I say that because of MO3, because of Redwall and the ROC, that you've made a push to improve a little bit?
Yeah. I really want to keep improving and always do better,
Yeah.
But there's a lot of stuff I want to learn to do, and now I'm working on like comic stuff where I'm pushing my character designs like even further and making them more expressive. I have a 1 second. I'm looking for the picture, but yeah, I found it. But now I'm like making characters like this where the characters are a lot more stylized and have more expressions and more comic booky. But this one's not Redwall related, but still, I'm learning a lot about drawing these characters just from my time drawing characters for MO3 and for the other survivors, which unfortunately I never finished the MO4 portraits. I don't even think I got very far into them. I have like a sketch of Kali somewhere.
Yeah.
I have like a sketch of Kali somewhere, and I have like a sketch of Comey somewhere too. But I didn't get very far into them. And then MO5, I had ideas for it. I have a portrait of Makai, but not the contestants.
MO5 was unfortunately faded. It was one of the victims of COVID. Couldn't be helped.
Yeah, COVID kind of killed the schedules of a lot of writers, and then of course the just general other stuff was happening too. But unfortunate. But
what can you do?
Yeah, there's always time for other contests though, so no big deal.
Exactly. On that note, you've been around since, what was it, Midnight Mossflower, right?
Yes, I think that's like 2012 or 2013.
Quite a while.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been around since then too.
Not as long as you.
Yeah, I honestly, sometimes I can't quite remember when I first showed up, because there was a lot where I was just lurking about and I was a little too shy to post because the internet was scary, man. Nah, I don't care about it. Like, we've seen the ROC wane and wax and come back and dissipate a little bit. Compared to when you first started getting involved in the ROC with fan fiction and even producing a little art, how big would you say art has been in the ROC community?
It was pretty big. I think it's actually gotten bigger since I joined. So I don't know if if this is just like a bias or just mean a difference in between like what I notice now compared to when I first joined. But so I really think there was only like one big artist for Redwall when I was joining the ROC, and that was Saphomia. Saphomia was she basically just, I wonder if her DeviantArt page still exists. She yeah, it does. How about that? So she did a lot of Redwall art. and her style was very much like it was very close to Nelvana's art style. So if you watch the Nelvana Redwall cartoon, it very much matched that art style. Outside of being just slightly more detailed. So it had like a bit more detailed coloring and shading and stuff like that. But she basically went in and literally would like basically draw everything from Redwall that interested her. So all the villains, all the characters, different scenes. She was like kind of the definitive Redwall artist on DeviantArt that I could see. She's since then moved on to her own like personal art and stuff like that. But at the time, yeah, she was like the Redwall artist. Like I can link a lot of her Redwall art doesn't seem to be on this account. I don't know if she had a different account or not, but like this is a drawing she did of Mariel. So it like kind of has that Nelvana art style, but has a bit more detail to it. Since then,
reflective.
yeah, since then it's kind of different people have of course risen up in the Redwall art world. We've always had like the official artists like Christopher Denise and I can't recall, Sean Rubin, I think that's his name. Yeah. We've always had like them, of course, but on like DeviantArt and Fur Affinity and things like that, we have like I'd say the most prevalent one now is Fortunato Fox, who is a Russian artist, I believe. Does a lot of Redwall style art. Though currently is kind of doing the same thing as Saphomia did, where it's kind of moving on to more personal stuff now. But
that does seem to be the trend, and I mean it's reflective of us
Yeah.
growing up. We start in the ROC, and this is what gets us drawing, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, I can do this now, and you start to do more personal things, more of your own projects, like your own Ozzy Fib.
Right, yeah. There's
Fern Blossom, who was very talented. She did the cover for Tarouge a few times.
I don't, but did they draw the like the Mouse Knight logo, if you know what I'm talking about, for Tarouge?
Yeah, I remember the one. I'm not entirely sure if that was her work, but I know she was
Okay.
working on the e-zine at the time that the new logo came out.
I always really liked that logo. I was never too into Tarouge or on it very much, but I remember seeing that logo a lot and was pretty into it.
It was good stuff.
Yeah.
I like Tarouge. They always had a different, well, I mean, more so when it was kind of petering out before it became Firebird, but they for a long time had like guest artists featured every single cover, so you got to see everything the ROC had to offer. I always find that to be a really nice touch. There's other artists out there too that aren't even ROC based, but they're still doing ROC work. Redwall Survivor itself, our banner on the forum. Recall, what's her name? I can't recall the artist's name, but they're not typically a Redwall artist, but they still do incredible Redwall work.
I think the banner artist. That's not. Is that Jacinto? I literally can't remember. It's kind of embarrassing to not remember the artist I'm using for that banner. But that does remind me of Jacinto, though. Jerome Jacinto is another really great Redwall artist. He doesn't do exclusively Redwall anymore because he's like professional, but he's done a lot of professional like art in the like anthro community. Apparently, Jerome Jacinto deactivated his DeviantArt account. That sucks. Okay, but anyways, he did a lot of Redwall art. He also did art for the video game Ghost of a Tale. He did art for Armello. He did art for another video game called Tooth and Tail. He's kind of like, oh, and I think he got like contacted. I don't know if he worked on it, but the art for the Redwall video game. But he's pretty prevalent in like the anthro like community for like being a pretty high profile artist because he just does so much like art for different video games and things like that.
Yeah, and it's funny to think like kind of got a start in the ROC.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of Redwall artists that are just
fantastic.
Yeah.
It attracts very talented people. I mean, there's one artist, Sandara, on DeviantArt, deviantart.com/SANDARA. She is starting to do a little bit of Redwall art because her son is now of age and she's reading the books to him now. And I'm gonna post something she recently did, Orlando and Matthias and Malkaris. And it's an incredible piece of artwork. It's very dynamic. There's obvious skill there. And I mean, she didn't get her start in the ROC, but that's just how attractive the ROC is.
Yeah.
It's not only enchanting to children, but when parents get a hold of this and they're like, hey, I'm creative, I can do something like this. This is the kind of caliber of art we're still receiving.
I think a lot of that has to do with Redwall is surprisingly like vague, if that makes sense. There's I feel like it's very like open-ended with how you can interpret it. So like I think it attracts a lot of artists because these characters outside of a couple of them, like Matthias kind of always having his like trademark habit. I feel like you can kind of interpret how these characters look and act and however you want. So I don't know. I think that attracts a lot of a lot of writers and artists who are interested in the whole medieval animal genre.
Yeah, one of the fun things a lot of artists explore, and a lot of people in the ROC are asking right now is like, well, what's the scale of the animals? Are mice really tiny standing next to these big giant badgers, or are they a little more relevant to each other? I think artists get a kick out of that.
With the Netflix news, the question that keeps me up at night every night is, will the horse show up?
Oh!
I just sit there and go, are they going to put in the horse? And we'll see.
Yeah, are they going to put... That's a good question, because it was in the original cartoon, if only for a second. It's on the cover of Redwall.
Yeah.
It's never mentioned again. I wonder, because they also mentioned Clooney, like, spreading so much disease, he takes out entire herds of cattle, too. Are we going to see any evidence of cows?
But yeah, it's like some of that stuff where it has that bit of openness that you can kind of, build your, build the characters like however you want and draw them however you want. And it's just also just a general dedication. Redwall doesn't have a very toxic fan base because there's nothing really to be toxic about, So, it's really just a pretty healthy community of people who all like the same thing and, want to see more of it,
Yeah.
So, the biggest debate I think we can have with the Redwall is just, how it's going to look with the Netflix adaptation or something, Obviously, regardless of what it looks like, there's going to be some people who are happy with it and some who won't be. But that's kind of a thing with
how it goes.
Yeah.
On that note, we're all very excited about the Netflix series. I mean, that's pretty much what this show is like. It's what lit a fire under us. What do you think the Netflix series is going to contribute? Like, do you think it's going to be a mover or a shaker? Is it going to, like, spur the ROC on? Is it going to inspire more creativity? Or do you think it's going to be intimidating to newcomers?
It'll depend on... obviously, it'll depend on how good it is, first and foremost. But I think if it's good, I mean, it can only do good things. Because I'm like thinking of other shows that are like also that have also came out and like gotten pretty dedicated fan bases. Stuff that had like even less of an attachment than like Redwall does to an extent. Like I'd say Redwall has less like universal appeal as this series, but like a better install base at the beginning. But like you had the She-Ra reboot on Netflix that was excellent and has made a ton of fans of that who every now and then on Twitter and stuff like that will trend She-Ra movie, desperately begging them to make a movie and stuff like that. But Redwall, I think, has a better install base than She-Ra did. So we'll see if all the Redwall fans come together to watch it and enough new people are interested in it, then, you know. But of course on who the Redwall show and movie is going to be made for.
And that actually leads me to my next question. Do you think the new Netflix series and the movie, do you think it's going to... I mean, we're hoping it's going to bring in a new generation of fans. Do you think we're also going to see a migration of old fans returning to the ROC?
I definitely think older fans are going to probably come in. I think whenever that kind of stuff comes in, you know, people tend to want to see it and stuff. I mean, I'm definitely interested. I kind of fell out of Redwall for a small bit and then got back into it during MO3. So I think anytime there's like a renewed focus on something you like, you kind of gravitate going back to it. I hope that there's a new blood, though, just because having new blood, of course, just means new ideas, new stories, new things like that, you know?
Mm-hmm. What would you like to see contributed to the community? What would you like to contribute to the community to welcome these newcomers and welcome back these old comers too?
As much as I hate to admit it, I do think Survivor is kind of niche. So like the best I can kind of do is really just try to create a forum for writers who are interested in doing collaboration and writing Redwall fanfic. But I really think having a Redwall kind of needs a hub right now, I think, is what it needs. With Tarouge gone and Long Patrol forums gone and things like that, there's not too many places for a actual like place, you know, an area for Redwall fans to really gather and connect with one another. So I feel like most of the Redwall fans currently who are connected are kind of separated from one another. So like if we had like a forum that kind of brought everyone together again, that would be great. But maybe the Netflix adaptation will do that. I could see it causing a higher activity on like the Redwall subreddit on Reddit and things like that. But it depends. I think that's kind of what the community needs right now, is just a more centralized hub for people to connect with one another. I don't know if Survivor can be that, just because Survivor kind of has its own, like, it has its own sort of, I'm trying to think of the right word, but it's Redwall related, but also sort of not at the same time. But I don't know if we can have a separate forum that could work. That would be excellent.
It would be. Certainly would be nice to see everyone together again.
Yeah.
Just like the old days. Back in the old days where everyone had a Redwall forum and Tarouge had about 100 associates.
Oh, yeah.
I think because of that, actually, Redwall has always been like a huge community. The ROC is what we call ourselves, and there used to be like dozens and dozens of hubs and everything. What was the attraction, do you think? Like, why was Redwall such a good starting point for people, just not even like creatively, but online, and then they get into writing, they get into art, they find all these cool hobbies out of it? What makes Redwall so appealing to people?
I kind of said it earlier, but I think it's generally how open-ended Redwall is. There's not a lot of set rules in Redwall. You can kind of just do whatever you want with it. The storylines are all fairly like, as much as I love them, they're kind of your typical fantasy adventure fare. But it has the world itself is kind of what I think actually makes people interested in it. The world has like a lot of this openness that can be interpreted however you want. It's got mysteries to it, and I don't know. I think that's appealing. You can kind of, when you have a world that kind of has books where they go to these new islands all the time, then you have fan fiction writers who can come up with their own islands and their own, storylines and stuff like that. I don't know. I think that's kind of what's so appealing to Redwall. And like I mentioned too, I think the community is as well is very open and inviting. There's not too much to really like push someone out of the Redwall fandom,
Right.
So unlike certain other fandoms and stuff where you can have these hot debates or whatever, Redwall doesn't really have that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it harkens back to what you said earlier. It's vague enough that people have a world that's already built, but they can build as many extensions as they want. And again,
Right,
the community is very into that. It's very supportive. We are an arts-based community. We're a literary-based community. So the support there, the encouragement of all sorts of ideas. Like some people are so into magic, they want it in Redwall. Other people are very opposed to it.
Right, yeah.
They like the vermin are vermin and the good beasts are good beasts. Other people are like, nah, man, we do what we want. This weasel does not have to be evil.
Yeah.
And no one will argue with you. Like no one will be like, you can't do that. There's a definite, I agree entirely. There's just, it's such a charming world without much to it that people can easily jump into it. And once they're in there, like the community, the support that you get, the absolute friendliness, there isn't really a toxic environment such as in other fandoms. I'm going to single out the Lion King fandom here because they just recently had another implosion. I don't know if you keep up with that, but there's been trouble. And their fans, I mean, I love the Lion King. I'm part of the Lion King fandom, but the fans do not get along. And it's a completely different ballgame. You come to Redwall and everything's non-aggressive and everybody wants to share ideas and encourage and see what they can do to help you, and then it's so safe.
Yeah. There's no real wrong interpretation for Redwall, if because it's Redwall. I mean, like you mentioned magic and stuff. I mean, Redwall kind of technically has magic in it already, just not like the fireball shooting kind. So like, it has things like seers, and I actually was briefly flipping through a Redwall book and like a few days ago, and noticed that there's like a line where they like explicitly say that like the Abbey champions are like will have the spirit of Martin the Warrior enter their bodies or whatever, and I'm like, the first time like ever where I guess I interpreted that literally. So like I'm like, oh, okay, so now I'm thinking of it like from a literal way where like Redwall has ghosts that can like literally possess you and stuff like that. So Redwall, I mean, and that's not necessarily a wrong interpretation or a right one. So that's kind of how Redwall works. It's all around interpretation, and you can kind of say, I want it to be this way, and no one's can really fault you for it. I'm really into some of the more mystical stuff of Redwall. I really like the seers, but I also like some of the more charming aspects too. My biggest criticism of the Redwall fandom is more that they don't embrace the really lighthearted tones of the books, where like people do not write songs enough.
This is true.
But
songs are hard.
They are hard.
That's my excuse.
Yeah, but like I think that's like the only thing I can like really be critical of the Redwall fandom for, is just being like or at least of things not feeling like Redwall, where I'm like, you gotta have some feast in your fanfics, guys.
Yeah, I mean, food is like 50% of the books.
Yeah, that's pretty important Redwall stuff, you know. I can accept your character, your character shooting lightning bolts out of their hands and stuff, but I can't accept the lack of food.
Yes, once they're done frying their enemies, if they don't sit down for some toast and meadow cream, something's wrong.
Yeah.
So
Um,
that's a fair criticism. There is a whimsical tone to the books that the fandom has kind of lost over the years, and I think that's just part of me wants to say it's consequence of us growing up, and the world is a dark and dangerous place.
yeah,
You notice like a lot of media these days is like dark and edgelord and like it's kind of like if you look at DC Comics versus Marvel comic movies, there's like the whimsical of Redwall and Marvel versus the modern dark edgelord stuff that we're seeing more and more. And I think partially it's a reflection of the world we're in right now. Things have been crazy in the past couple. I mean, things are always crazy, but things for our generation, the Redwall generation, things have been particularly crazy.
yeah. There's a big focus on that too, where with good vermin stuff and things like that. People like they're really want the. I don't know. I think I'm trying to think of like a right way to respond to that, but like I think people really want like Redwall for it being a perfect little, fantasy escapism. There's nothing really inherently dark about it besides maybe like some of the violent aspects, but like it's very much a lighthearted romp, and I think that it makes for good escapism. I do think that as the world has gotten more dark, I think that just media in general has gotten darker. I wonder how that might factor into like the Netflix movie, and whether like I said this earlier, but depending on who the Redwall movie is made for, is it going to be made for Redwall fans who are grown up, or is it going to be made for, as a very faithful Redwall adaptation, Because if it's if it's made for Redwall fans who are grown up, I mean, I could see the Redwall movie being a lot more darker. There could be a lot more violence, and while the whimsy and happy moments and stuff like that will probably still be in it, I think the darker moments will be even more dark to kind of contrast it. But that being said, I mean, one of the things I've said before in the past is if they made a Redwall movie, I actually think my preferred art style for the movie would be Christopher Denise's art style. He did the Redwall. He did the Redwall children's books. I think they are charming completely, and if I saw a Redwall cartoon animated like that, I would love it so much.
That would definitely give you that feeling again that this is a children's series originally, and it would be a nice return to that charming whimsiness.
Yeah, but I want.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, but I was just gonna say, but I wonder, like, if they did that as like the art style, I wonder how many people would like that, and how many wouldn't, because I think a lot of people would also really want that darkness too. They really want like their scary Clooney the Scourge and their violence in Redwall too. Because I mean, you have to have like some bit of healthy contrast in it to really solidify the weight of what Redwall is. But I don't know. It's a crazy question, yeah.
I want to mention, like, depending on who the Netflix movie, the Netflix series is for, they might even decide to switch styles. Who knows? Do you think that's going to set the tone of the next generation of ROC members?
Maybe. I think people have a tendency to gravitate towards more serious storylines when it comes to fandoms and things like that. People really like their at least like from me, like having a perspective from like being like really big into American animation and like anime fandoms and stuff like that. People really like their long form TV and stuff like that, and I don't know. So I feel like if the Redwall fandom grows from the movie, I think they'll probably want it to be more Lord of the Rings than like Redwall, you know, if that makes sense. I don't know. I feel like people will want it to be more epic and grand scale, and if that's the case, then I feel like that's kind of going to be how the community changes as a result later. The whimsy might not be gone completely, but I think it'll be a lot more epic and high stakes and stuff like that. You know.
Yeah, I mean,
At
I'm
least,
very curious to see what happens. This Netflix
yeah.
series is a big deal for us old guard.
Yeah, I mean, we've been dreaming of a new adaptation for a long time. Heck, some people wanted to make their own adaptation back in the, I think it was around 2014 or so. They tried to, a group of artists on DeviantArt tried to make their own adaptation of Mossflower. There were storyboards made and character designs, scripts were written, voice actors were hired. That got shut down.
Dang, yeah.
Yeah, the Jake's estate did not like that.
Mm,
But hey, it was
yeah,
fun. It was
you have
fun.
to draw the line somewhere.
Yeah, it was a fun team building exercise though.
That's good, and I'm sure everybody learned a lot. Like I wasn't aware of that, but the moment you said storyboards, I was like, oh, that's ambitious.
Oh yeah, you can still find some of the work on DeviantArt. It was going to be an adaptation of Mossflower, so I wonder if some of the stuff is still on DeviantArt, but yeah, there was a lot of work like that done. So I don't know. It'll depend. I think so long as the show does not look like Watership Down, I think it'll probably get some interest.
That's the general consensus. Just not Watership
Yeah.
Down, please.
But I also have this. I don't know. There's a lot of talk about with the Redwall adaptation because there's so many things they could. Like I personally think the best move that they could do is to just do a 1-to-1 faithful adaptation because I'm afraid if they don't go 100% faithful, they'll make it too different, and not like too different in terms of like changing the story or whatever, but rather instead like changing the tone, because like I could see them going for like a Avatar: The Last Airbender tone where it's kind of got jokes thrown in and stuff, you know, and things like that. And Redwall's never really had that, I don't think. I mean, it's had like funny moments, but not like zingy one-liners and catchphrases and stuff, I guess. I don't know. We'll see.
I want to do mention, like, yeah, there isn't quite that Ryan Reynolds sort of
Yeah.
attitude. And like even Lord Brocktree, one of my favorite books, like the main
Mhm.
characters, there's a big heavy focus on the hairs, and so there are comical moments.
Right.
But yeah, they're still like they're not really funny. They're just there to lighten the tension of the situation. And
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm like just wondering if they'll have like, so I really like The Dragon Prince, okay? It's a show on Netflix. It's really good, but like it has like these super serious moments that are like really really good and well handled. And then it has like these random cutaway lines that are like supposed to be funny but really kind of like one of the characters in like the second episode is like and these are the villains, by the way, like the antagonist. They're like he's like, I don't remember the context completely, but he's like, after all, unstoppable is just another form of stoppable. And like the main antagonist is just like what? And he's like the main villain. And he just goes, no, that's stupid. And I'm like, why is the main antagonist like having this zingy like goofball joke moment, you know? I guess it like humanizes him slightly because he's not like completely evil, but spoilers, but like but like I don't know. I'm like worried it'll have like weird things like that in it or something.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't I would appreciate like some tension lifting moments, some good old jokes, a
Yeah.
little bit of that modern version of narrative, but at the same time, like that's not traditionally Redwall. It's very focused.
Yeah. Redwall has a very distinct sort of what's the word? Not it has that vintage feel to it, you know. It feels like it was written in like the 80s. But I think if it doesn't have the I think if the writing for the show like is too modern, it'll feel a bit strange, you know.
Yeah, it's a bit of a balance.
Yeah, we will definitely see.
Yeah, it's one of those things where we gotta just wait and see what happens, right?
Yeah.
On that note, like, because I do suspect we are going to see at least a minor influx in new ROC members, and
Oh yeah, definitely.
I hope so. What would you recommend to new members, new artists, new writers coming into the fandom? What steps would you recommend they take, and how would you welcome them to the fandom?
Literally do whatever you want. Redwall is you can do anything with Redwall. It's I mean that's really all I can say, you know. It's Redwall's so open ended. You can just have fun and do whatever you want and explore anything creatively from it. I would just also say, respect other people. Please don't turn Redwall into a toxic fandom.
Very true.
I really don't need. I really don't need people yelling at other Redwall fans for not respecting their ships or drawing a character in a different way than in what is normally portrayed.
Yeah, we haven't really seen much of that over the years, but it is good advice. Just welcome, keep it civil, keep it a safe space. I couldn't have worded it any better, man. Just do whatever you want, so long as you're respectful.
I don't know if you've heard of the if you know too much about other like fandoms and things like that, but have you heard of like the controversy of like the Steven Universe fandom or anything like that? Okay, so Steven Universe is a Cartoon Network show. It's primarily known for being very very open with its representation. So it has a lot of LGBT characters and things like that in it. And it also has a lot of character designs that are, have different body types and stuff like that. Anyways, there's a character in it named Rose Quartz who is very big. She's like definitely a plus size woman, also very tall. So she's just very big. And I think like the fandom for Steven Universe has this sort of mindset where they're like, oh yeah, we love everyone, and like the entire show is literally about loving and accepting other people and things like that. But an artist on Tumblr drew Rose Quartz slightly thinner than normal and got death threats. And so many death threats that the artist actually attempted suicide. And she survived, thankfully. But that happened, and that's like a giant stain on that fandom. But so long as that doesn't happen in Redwall, where people draw cornflower the wrong way, and get mad about it. Like Redwall kind of has that open-endedness where it's like there is no right way to draw these characters. I genuinely think the only character in the entire in the entire canon that has like an actual set design is like Matthias.
It's true.
Pretty much everyone else is kind of pretty easy to interpret however you want.
Yeah, it goes back to that quote-unquote vagueness of Redwall. It's so open-ended that anyone can enjoy it however they want.
Yeah.
What a truly horrifying story you just told me.
Oh yeah, sorry.
I am so glad the ROC is not like that. Like
Yeah.
there's everybody has arguments, everybody has bad moments. Sometimes people don't get along, but for the most part, like I've never heard of anyone being threatened of
Mhm.
attempted suicide. This is a very welcoming, chill community.
It's
And
kind of the pain of when the fandom just gets super big. You know, you have some people who take that stuff just super far, and and I kind of like understand it to an extent. There are a lot of people who really value their the representation they have and stuff like that, so they don't want to like it to be threatened. Um, but it's also just art. There's a lot of stuff in art too where like you'll have and this is notorious on like Tumblr and Twitter and things like that, but you'll have like a dark skinned character who like gets drawn with slightly lighter skin, and usually in this art it's due to like the lighting or something. So like the lighting is shining on them and it's making them look lighter. So people will get upset about it and they'll like go in and fix your art, and they'll like edit it in Photoshop and be like, "There, I fixed your art." And it's like, no, that's not the intentional, what I was doing with the art. So it's not really fixed. You're kind of just making yourself look like a jerk by doing that. But I also kind of get it at the same time, people don't really want that representation of threatened, especially the current world we're in, and like the way the world is changing.
that is a very good point. Like
Yeah.
that there is the social stirring going on right now, and I mean it needs to happen. Humanity has to always try and be better, of course. And I'd like to think the ROC, like so many people get their start here, and it is primarily a children's book series. It just so happens to have an adult fan base, but there are young folk mixed in with us.
Yeah.
It's a very good diverse spread. There's literally people from all over the world, all sorts of different ethnicities and cultures can gather around Redwall. And I think we're lucky in that regard that we come from a children's series with animals, so people don't have to worry about so much about like human representation. So like nobody's gonna be
definitely
thinking like, oh no, you drew a stoat when he's clearly a weasel. I'll picture art for you, kind of thing. Like it's not that. It's like, I see this is in your art. Perhaps if you tried this, you could get it to more look like this next time. Good job, though. There's so much support there instead of snobbery.
Yeah. I think I mean, there's just a lot of support in the Redwall fandom. I think it's just because of I think everyone who's part of it just kind of knows how small it is. So I mean, no one really wants to make it smaller, Last thing we want to do is run out some prospective people, But but yeah, there's. I mean, I'm just hoping with the Netflix adaptation that doesn't come to pass. Probably won't. I'm not like super scared about it or anything, but it really just depends ultimately on like what the movie looks like, And I think, like, honestly, because of what you said with the that there's like no human characters and stuff, I feel like that's why the biggest debate in the entirety of the like Redwall fan fiction universe and like the ROC is like just the good vermin debate,
Yeah.
Where it's just kind of like, I don't like that vermin are always bad, so when I write fan fictions, I'm gonna make it so that the vermin aren't always bad.
That's pretty good. That's a mark of pride we can wear. Our biggest problem is deciding whether or not this rat is good or bad.
Yeah. And I think part of to be honest, I think part of the reason too is because everyone loves foxes, and no one wants foxes to be just evil. I mean, come on. I like foxes. I don't want them to be evil.
Yeah.
I mean,
evil. They're so
I don't want my good guy to be a lame hedgehog. He could be a fox. Foxes are cool. You know,
But hedgehogs are cool too.
I mean, they are. But if I had to do a Redwall species popularity poll, I'm pretty sure fox would probably be in the top 3.
It's always a fox or it's always a muslin, and they're
Yeah.
always right up there in the top 2. I think that's like a fact amongst the ROC at this point. Everybody
Yeah.
loves foxes. Everybody loves a woozle type. I want to actually talk a bit about the future, and I mean, I've been trying to talk about the future anyway. But with the ROC growing a little bit more, with all the excitement and the buzz over the Netflix announcement, let's talk just a little bit about Redwall Survivor and Mossflower Odyssey. We know Mossflower Odyssey 3 was a very big deal. There was a lot of activity, a lot going on there. Unfortunately, Mossflower 5 had to be canceled because COVID kicked us in our tail. What can you do?
Yeah.
But what's in store for Redwall Survivor now that the ROC is picking up a little more steam than the usual chug? Now that Corona is, I don't want to say calming down, but things are relaxing a little bit more. And of course, with the new Netflix announcement, what are the plans for Redwall Survivor?
So, Survivor is still alive, thankfully.
Woohoo!
I only say that just because my time hasn't been spent on it lately. But just at the moment, the kind of idea with Survivor is that I want to fix the forum, because if you've been on the forum lately, it's had some issues for the past year since MO5, and that was due to a transfer to a new server that didn't go completely great. So there's a couple of bugs on the forum and stuff that I just want to fix. I just need time to do that. Like, I need to dedicate a weekend or something to fix all that. But that's one thing I really want to do with Survivor. The next is, of course, I want a new one. But I am sort of debating between different ideas. Currently, like, when I write now, my writing is kind of almost completely focused on things that just interest me personally. So MO5 interested me because I got to lean more into like spiritual stuff of Redwall. So MO5 was a lot about seers and prophecies and things like that. So I got to like explore that more and think about that. But so I'm like trying to think of different ideas that like would interest me in the Redwall universe to like make a contest around. And as the sort of, you know, adage goes, you know, where it's like you know, if the writer, like the admin or whatever, is interested, you know, the writers should theoretically be interested too, right? You know, if the passion is there from the start, you know, I mean, you'll bring people into it. So like currently the things I'm interested in right now are I really want to do a horror a horror story, because I think I think some of the storylines and ideas in the Redwall novels could be explored in that kind of environment. The only like problem with it is it would need to be like open for writers. Like the writers would need to be open to it and be willing to explore Mossflower in that way, you know. Because by adding that into Mossflower, you know, we talked about it earlier, where you know, I think people like the comfort of the whimsical, you know, escapism that Redwall provides. Like if we inserted more, you know, realistic horror elements into Redwall, would that alienate people? Would that make people not want to, you know, write in it? Because the horror in mind that I want for the Redwall contest is less of a slasher and more like a psychological, sociological type. I want it to be like this this story that kind of makes you question like the contest in mind I have right now is codenamed Metamorphosis. It's going. I like this idea about the story being sort of themed around the idea of change. So it's a moss flower that's changing. It's growing and becoming different, and it's not really the same moss flower that you would know from the books. And the thing I want the writers to like explore in this sort of contest is the consequences of that change, the horrifying realities of what change means, and whether is it scarier to change or scarier to stay the same.
It's a very relevant theme for today, that's for sure.
Yeah. So that's kind of the stuff I like to explore. Is I explore different themes and things like that are in my head that interest me, and try to make contests around them. That being said, I have a particular flaw when it comes to my adminning, where I can get too invested in what I'm working on to the point where it almost feels like I'm asking people to write my novel for me. So I don't want people to like get that feeling anymore or anything like that. So I want to also try to stay away once I write it, write the prologue and then try to keep myself at arm's length so that people can explore the concepts on their own and come up with their own conclusions. I don't want to like tell them, hey, this is the conclusion that I want you to draw at the end. I want you guys to kind of come up with what you want from this world and story. But so that's one idea that we can do. Another idea I had in mind was a much more open-ended like story. This would be kind of like MO3, where like there's no real grand themes or ideas. It's just a idea that works for a survivor. And that's an adaptation of The Most Dangerous Game, where basically the characters would be people who are like kidnapped or something and are then hunted for sport by some kind of professional hunter because he's bored of hunting whatever he's been hunting. So he's like, I'm going to hunt people now,
It's just my weekend.
Yeah, so that could be a good survivor contest. Though I don't know as many of the ideas like for it outside of like having a rough idea of what I think would be a good villain for it. But yeah, like that's kind of where we're at with Survivor.
So the cogs are turning then, and things are being developed, but we're still in the pre-production phase.
Yeah, the idea is I want a contest by June if I can help it. If I can't get it done by June, then sometime this year. Unfortunately, the older I get, the busier I get, and it's a fine balance between trying to run Survivor and do my life.
Right.
I want to do comics for a living, and that is oh my god, it's a lot of work. But I also have a job at the moment too, so I'm trying to find that right balance where I'm able to do everything. It's not like MO3 where I was a student at the time, so I was able to have a lot more time to commit to Survivor. So as my time is running low, I'm beginning to like have to make concessions, and that's kind of why I try to like focus on things that personally interest me, because when the stuff that like when I work on stuff that personally interests me, I'm a lot more committed to it, and I like will make sure it gets done.
Mm-hmm. It is a tricky balance. It is.
I don't want to say like June and then June turns to August and August turns to December. I know it's frustrating when like you shift deadlines constantly or whatever, and it's always a like, oh, we'll have a contest by then, but actually no.
Yeah, it's one of those fights that's always been present in the ROC. We all start as kids, and then we become students, and then adults, and a lot of us end up taking hiatuses or just having to outright leave simply because life gets in the way. But then we always find a way. We do tend to come back.
Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at now with Survivor. And there are some other writers who have like contest ideas too. Vin has a idea for a contest he's been working on, which he hasn't written it yet, but he literally told me when I was like saying, "Hey, here's the contest idea. If anybody's interested in judging, let me know." He basically sent me a message immediately that said, "Hey, I'm probably not going to apply to it because of my own personal life and stuff and time frame stuff. So I'll probably judge. Also, I think it's probably best that I spend my time working on my contest during that time." So he might start working on his contest by around June or so. Maybe I won't. I can't speak for him completely, but and what little I know about his contest is I can't totally spoil, but I will like say the name of it. He's calling it Warpath. So maybe look forward to that in June, or at least more news around that in June or so. But we'll see. So there's stuff happening on the horizon, but the actual set date isn't really set in stone yet.
Yeah, well, the stew is being made. I can't wait till it starts to simmer.
Yeah.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, carry on. Go.
I was going to mention, did you want to drop a link for anyone to check out your art gallery, or if you have a personal website or a fiction website you'd like some people to check out?
I have like, unfortunately, a lot of my art like online is like super outdated, and I don't really update it much. But I can like link my Twitter. 1 second. Just because my Twitter has a bit more recent art on it.
Yeah, take the opportunity, show off.
Yeah. So this is my Twitter. Though it's kind of a mix of my art and me just retweeting other people's art. So not too much on here yet, but I should probably get to adding more stuff to it. You know.
Yeah, well, I mean, life gets in the way, but so long as you're trying creatively, right? That's what this is all about.
Yeah.
Is there anything you'd like to talk about, Airan, that we haven't covered at all?
Honestly, not that I can think of. I think we've covered a lot of stuff. All I can really think of is, well, heck, I don't even know. Just go out with some last words or something and just say, always keep creating or something, you know?
Good words to go out by. Wise advice.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to...
It's sometimes hard, but, you know, gotta keep trying. I just bought a new tablet, and I've been playing with it for the past couple days, and I can't wait to play with it more.
Is that the one you recommended I pick up, the Syntac?
Maybe. I can't remember which one I recommended you. If you're like super into art, a Cintiq is amazing. If you can like afford it, they're kind of expensive, but I just recently bought a Cintiq 16, which is like a it's relatively tiny. It's about the same size as my laptop, but it has like a screen on it that mirrors whatever's on my laptop, and I can just draw directly onto it. So none of the weird like tablets where you're like drawing on a blank tablet and having to kind of look at your computer screen, you know, like that. But it was like $600. Useful if you're really into digital art. Wouldn't recommend it if you're not, but definitely look at it if you're interested. I've seen some of your art on DeviantArt, and it looks pretty solid. So
yeah, thank you. I use a Wacom Bamboo, one of those weird tablets.
Okay, yeah, what I'm mentioning, yeah. I used to have one of them. That was my first tablet, but like once you play with the Cintiq, you can't go back.
Yeah, you get spoiled by the good tech.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to thank you very much for doing this interview and participating in this episode of Fox Penmanship. Once again, I'm going to shout out redwallsurvivor.com. Join us on the forums. Join us on the Discord. Airan and I are usually around, and there's always someone else to talk to if we aren't. Thank you so much for being here, and it's been an absolute pleasure to have you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure too. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
What a fantastic episode that was. So much talent crammed into such a tiny podcast. That's the beauty of the ROC. There are so many people willing to share their amazing talents and humor a little old podcaster like me. Now, I'd like to take a quick moment to address the empty chair at the table. Redwall Survivor's resident artist, Vizon, is noticeably absent from the art episode. She was unable to join us, but I'd like to give a very warm and loving nod to her. She's made the Redwall Survivor contest that much more beautiful by gracing us with her beautiful scene artistry, her gorgeous character art, and her all-around generosity. We're thinking of you, Vizon, and wishing you and yours the absolute best. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you like what you heard, go ahead, hit that little like button, ring that big old Joseph subscribe bell, and join us next time for another episode of Fox Penmanship. Cheers, everyone. Stay safe and stay creative.